Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. We're back. It's 2026, and the new season in Eliteserien is about to get underway. I'm joined as ever for the exclusive season preview, the big episode. Meat Man Soccer has been getting his team ready, his predictions ready. And on this episode, for those who are new, obviously, we are going to preview every single team in the league for you. What are the key tactics, key managers, players to watch out for, everything you need to know about every single team in the league, and also predict where we think each team will finish in this season's Eliteserien. There's a big focus on Norwegian football at this moment in time, European-wide, worldwide, because of one particular team who we shall talk about very soon. And for those who are new, of course, we normally predict the team who will win the title first, and then we go down the table and predict every single team that Mr. Steve Wyss thinks will win the league and where they will fare and where they will finish. So without further ado, our Norway expert for a good 10 years nearly, here he is, ready to go. How are you, Mr. Steve Wyss? He's been ready in preparation, doing a lot of work behind the scenes, looking at every player and team, every tactic, and he's ready to go. How are you, Steve?
Hello, Jonathan. Yes, I am. Well, I've been very, very busy. Like you said, this is the earliest start we've had in Eliteserien for, I don't know when exactly, but it's not normally that we're this early. And it's been hectic with the whole football schedule of late, hasn't it? Champions League, Europa, all that. So in terms of timing, it couldn't really be worse, I don't think, in terms of when this league's getting underway. We've had the added distraction of Bodø Glimt in the Champions League, of course. But it's a long season. We've got a World Cup break midway through it. But the 30 games do start this weekend for most teams. And here we are for Eliteserien 2026 and ready for an in-depth season preview. I think it's interesting. I feel like the league is fairly kind of split up into three sections, but each section can be quite difficult to predict. There's quite a sameness in each section of caliber of teams. So the sort of predictions table is both easy and difficult, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's easy and difficult. I think you've been busy at work, and the league it's a bit of a quirk of nature, really, that for all the focus on Bodø Glimt in terms of the Champions League, because let's be honest, they are in very good shape as we speak to get into the Champions League quarterfinals, which is absolutely incredible after a 3-0 win against Sporting CP of Lisbon. So it's crazy to think that a team that's nearly in the Champions League quarterfinals of Norway isn't actually the league champion. And that is the weird dichotomy that we've got in this league, Steve. So I think your big, you said the league is split into different sections. Your big, I suppose, first decision is going to be who you think is going to win the title. Before we sort of get into that, and obviously, you're going to make your predictions from 1 to 16 team league. 2 go down, 2 go into the relegation playoffs. Steve, I know we talk a lot about your background in Norwegian football, and we'll obviously, I think throughout the show, we'll probably delve into a little bit of that as well, maybe in part 2. We'll also have Eliteserien fantasy code for you. Those who are going to be playing Eliteserien fantasy, get your teams ready and get yourself in before the deadline. And if you're listening to this after the season has started, obviously, you can still join even after week 1. But Steve, just talk to us about what Viking achieved before you make your first prediction, because they are the reigning champions at this moment in time. There's a huge focus on Bodø Glimt, of course, and we will talk about them in a minute in terms of where you think they'll finish. But let's just talk about the champions to begin with. You don't have to tell us where you've got them now, but let's just bring the context into this because, as I said, Glimt are in the Champions League quarterfinal, but it's Viking that are the reigning champions of Norway.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this floated around on the socials recently about Bodø Glimt's run in the Champions League, and everyone's saying, well, they're not even the champions of Norway. How good must Viking be? Well, the simple answer is Bodø Glimt are the best team in Norway. They were the best team in Norway last season, but they didn't win the league. That can happen sometimes. Everything went Vikings' way. They've been sort of knocking on the door for several years anyway. They learned from their past mistakes. They didn't have European football to contend with. Injuries kind of went their way. And 71 points is a lot of points. Bodø Glimt were only 1 point behind them. Sometimes you just got to say well played to the other team, haven't you? And I think that's what Viking did last season. I think it was a popular title win. It was good to see another team win it again after so long. And I think we might look back at this and think, wow, it's a good job they took their chance there and then, because they might not get another chance like this. But what they achieved to beat this Bodø Glimt machine was a great achievement, and ultimately the key result did come down to Bodø Glimt losing to Vålerenga on the 1st of November last season, and eventually that hectic European schedule did catch out Bodø Glimt, but Viking have got that to contend with themselves this season. So let's see how they get on there. They will have a big target on their back. Maybe not quite as big as Glimt, but they will have a big target on their back. So it's never easy defending championships.
Yeah, and it was an absolutely unbelievable achievement for Viking, wasn't it, Steve? Everything they fought for over many years. Viking have been a dominant force. Molde, of course, during the last sort of many years, have also been a team that have regularly won the title. But Viking, Steve, it wasn't long ago. They were in the Obos-ligaen. They got relegated a good sort of 7, 8, 9 years ago. Came back, and then, of course, as we just mentioned, pipped Glimt to the post in the title race last season to win their first league title for more than 30 years. They are 9 times winners of Eliteserien, and it was their first win since 1991. A really impressive achievement from the club. Steve, let's get into it then. Who have you got to win the title? I think we should probably, I don't know where you want to start. Do you want to start with Viking as the champions? Normally we start with the champions, and I think it probably is the best thing to do. But of course, if you want to start with who you think will win the league, if it's different, I'm going to let you make that decision yourself. So who would you prefer? You want to tease the listeners, or do you want to just go straight in?
I'm going to break with tradition here. I'm going to go with the team that I think is going to win the league, because it's going to come as no surprise to anyone. And to be honest, anyone who doesn't predict Bodø Glimt to win the league, I'll be very interested to hear their reasoning for it, because it's the logical pick. It's the sort of the emotional pick. Everything about it makes sense. I just don't see how you can oppose them when you see what they've been doing in Europe this season. They seem to have moved to a different level. And if they play like this, then they're capable of going unbeaten in the whole season. The issues are, of course, the actual challenging schedule for them. That's one of the issues. Possibly they might lose some players. Who knows? They might even lose the manager at some point. But the money that they're making from the Champions League, and not just this season, the Euro money that they've had the last 2 or 3, means that they're in a fantastic position to bolster the squad whenever they want to. In the summer transfer window, they've got so many options up their sleeves. And then I will talk about some of the Achilles heels of the potential opposition as well. As things stand, they're not actually going to be playing in the first 2 rounds. The league have postponed those games so they can focus on the Champions League. After that, at some point, those games have got to be fitted in. At some point, they're going to have a massive Champions League / Europa League qualifying campaign because they didn't win the league last season. But everything about them, it's an incredible setup they've got. For once, I don't really need to explain too much about Bodø Glimt, do I? Because everyone's seen them. Everyone is talking about Glimt. Everyone's watching them. They're a damn good team. They've got the best squad. They've got the best manager. They've got by far the most resources now. How can they be opposed?
Well, that is the big question. I mean, I think if we go back to your predictions last year, you had them as well to win the league. And it's pretty predictable one to make, really. It's difficult to go against them. Just the sheer size of the club alone in terms of what they're doing. I mean, there's an interesting recent stat, Steve, that's been put out today by a financial journalist, which I found very interesting. Chris Witherspoon, who's a finance writer for The Athletic. Steve, he has tweeted today saying that Bodø Glimt, by getting to the quarterfinals potentially, or even just by getting to this stage alone, they're 3-0 up. Obviously, we're still at the first leg stage. They have made 65 million euros in revenue up to this point from the Champions League. And as he puts it, the combined revenue of all the other 15 clubs in Norway's top division in 2024 was 158 million euros, or 10.5 million per club. Now, based on that alone, that's 6 times the annual income of any other club just from one campaign. That's not even including any other revenue. So they're probably averaging about 7 to 8 times the revenue of any other club, Steve. It's very difficult to make the argument that they won't win the league based on finances, wages. Let's start with what could go wrong, because we can come to like what they're good at. And like you said, a lot of people will be, even some people still turning their nose up, in my opinion, because I think I put a tweet out saying I think they could win the Champions League potentially. If they avoid the right teams, I think they could still win Champions League. And I got a little bit of stick for that from Spurs fans as well, who weren't happy, thinking that they were easy pickings, having beaten them. But what could go wrong? Because is there an argument to say, Steve, that at the end of this Champions League campaign, I mean, if they do go through as it stands, it's very likely that they'll play Arsenal in the next round. Arsenal should probably beat Bayer Leverkusen at home, and Glimt, barring a catastrophe in Portugal, are pretty much through with a 3-0 lead. They could play Arsenal, and that would be probably curtains for them in the Champions League, let's face it, unless there's a miracle that we're going to witness. Is there the possibility, because I've seen Kjetil Knutsen's face in these post-match interviews, he genuinely looks like he's living his dream at the moment. Like, he looks like this is everything he's waited for and hoped for. Is there a possibility that after that Arsenal second leg, potentially, or Bayer Leverkusen, if they don't go through, he comes out and says, enough's enough for me, I'm out of it? Has he got the stomach for another season, having been there for how long?
Well, we've had this question for the last 5 years, haven't we? On the podcast, we really have. Of course,
they've never been in the Champions League before, the top group stage, which is always what they've always been waiting for that and building to that. This is the first time they've ever made that.
Okay, so let's say worst case scenario, what could go wrong for Bodø Glimt is at the start of the season, they're fully focused on the Champions League. So any matches they do play, they drop points in. That could happen. We've seen it happen before. Sometimes you have a real drop down after a high. You know, even when they're knocked out of the Champions League, maybe they could have a bit of a hangover. That could go wrong. The manager could leave, and players could leave as well, of course. Some of the players might think it can't get any better than this. But then on the flip side of it, surely, I know this club, they're so well run, they will probably have a contingency plan in place. They can pick whatever manager they want from Scandinavia, really. Let's be honest. The money they could float at that. And players as well. They can handpick players from clubs in the whole region, really, and abroad for that matter. So that's on the again though. That could be that can take time, can't it, for potentially new signings and stuff to settle in. So things could go wrong. Another thing that could go wrong: a team could get a different team could get 70+ points again. It happened last season. Maybe it could happen again. You know, Glimt have had some incredible points tally since 2020. So of course things can go wrong. So, but ultimately, at the end of the day, they're in the best position throughout the whole calendar year to deliver a title crown. And let's remember, they didn't win the title last season. That can also make players hungry. Let's not underestimate that. When you've not won the title, you can sometimes want it more. So, yeah, that's my reasoning overall. I'd be very interested if anyone really would predict a different team and would truly believe it, and what the reasons are, because I just can't see. I know it's a boring prediction, but I just can't see beyond them.
Yeah, it's very difficult to see beyond them. Like you say, Knutsen is in a fantastic position. I'm going to be honest, I've got a feeling, reading between the lines of some of his press conferences, I think he might leave, to be honest. I know we've said it for many, many years. He's been there, 10 years now, at least?
Yeah, a long time, yeah.
I'm going to come out and say I think he may look at this and be like, time for a change. This is a once in a lifetime. They're never going to. This is a once in a lifetime thing. I mean, you say that, but Glimt are that good. I think they could actually go again in the Champions League, to be honest. But that's a different story. Let's focus on the positives. What is it that makes this team so good? Because they, like we said, they're in the Champions League. They're 1 foot away from Champions League quarterfinals. Never been done before by a Norwegian team in history, I believe. You might correct me on that, Steve. Not in the
I don't
modern
believe
day.
so. No.
Last season got to the Europa League semi-finals. Never been done before by a Norwegian team. Didn't win the
Exactly
league,
that.
but they are a fantastic team. What is it that makes them so good? Give them some props and some praise about why you think they're going to win the league. What are their strengths? And also, how have they evolved a little bit? Like, are they evolving in your opinion? What makes them? Is it just that they're way better than everyone, or what's making them such a good team, even in European competition against some big clubs? They've beaten Atletico Madrid, they've beaten Manchester City, they've beaten team after team that you would not predict that they'd beat. Inter Milan, Sporting Lisbon. What is it that they've evolved in? What is it that makes them so good? What is it that makes them your 2026 champions?
Well, in the Champions League, they've evolved to be more streetwise and sort of know when to control the game a bit better, defend if they have to, rather than give up big chances. I think they did that quite well against Inter. But they're such a well-drilled unit. Everyone knows each other. It's the same system, and it has been for the last 10 years, really. Or 6-7 years anyway, 4-3-3. You know what you're going to get with this side. The players out wide usually cut inside. Fullbacks can get forward for support. They've got a very good goalkeeper in Nikita Kaikin. I think he's seriously underrated. Every time we talk about Glimt, I mention him. So they've got that. Defensively, they could do with maybe a little bit more depth, actually. I would say that's an area they could look at. If their starters go down in defence, I think that's where their weakness is. And that has happened in the last 2 or 3 years sometimes. You can get at them then. So that's probably an area where I'm surprised they haven't bolstered the squad actually a bit defensively. But midfield and attack is loaded, really. Like some Evienberg, Saltnes, Fett, Auckland. I mean, bloody hell, that's incredible. Kasper Wartsho is a key striker. Probably might lose him in the summer, actually. Norwich nearly bought him in January, so I could see someone signing Wartsho for like 20, 25 million, you know. I think that's how much his stock has gone up. But that sort of player is quite easy to find now for them. They can easily get a number 9. And if they spend decent money on one if they need. So I'm not too worried if they lost him at all. But all things considered, they're just, as I say, especially in midfield and attack, absolutely stocked, loaded. And it's the overall system is just incredible. Everyone knows their role so well, and it just works.
Yeah, everything works. Like you said, there was strong rumours about a move to Norwich for their main striker, but with the revenue they've got, 65 million revenue, Steve, they might turn around and make a bid for Dominic Calvert-Lewin there over at Leeds with that kind of money. So where do you think they'll strengthen? How have they strengthened? And who are the sort of new key players? Because obviously they can't even... some of the new players, I don't think they've even...
They've not had anyone, have they, properly?
Yeah.
I don't think they have, and they've not lost anyone really of significance apart from Jorgensen, who of course went to Blackburn for 4 million. Breda and Mo retired, and that's it. Again, consistency of squad is incredible. The breakup of this squad would come mid-season or at the end of the season if it breaks up. Remember, some of these players have left the club before and come back, so some might just think, you know what, the grass isn't always greener. Although I do believe in certain instances, likes of maybe Hauger, even Berg, Evian, might just feel like, yeah, we want to give it another go in a different league. Kasper Wartsho, I think, would be prime for that as well. But, like I say, I'm pretty confident even if they lose players, they'll sign good ones. And they've got lots of resources to do that, Jonathan. The transfer window is still 3 weeks to go, by the way. Wouldn't surprise me if they brought a few players in from domestically or within Scandinavia, especially in defence. I think they could do with a bit of depth everywhere, really, in defence. Centre back, left back, right back. A couple of players just to fill in.
Yeah, just to fill in. And they're so well organised behind the scenes as well. It's not just the manager and, how he sets up his team and their enterprising style of football. It's also off the pitch. They've got some really fantastic operators behind the scenes doing fantastic stuff, really, to build the club in all areas, scouting as well and recruitment. And they tend to recruit very well. Steve, just looking at the league in general, just before we move on to sort of Viking and why, or if it is Viking indeed, I don't know who you've got second place, but you've got them as champions. Um, the league has had, we're told, according to Transfermarkt, 27 million euros of transfer expenditure income in departures, and 20 million spent as well, which is quite a lot of money in the winter period. So I don't know if Transfermarkt's accurate. But obviously, Glimt have sold Jorgensen to Blackburn is one of their biggest outs per Transfermarkt, and there's others. But yeah, that just a bit of sort of financial context there. But they've got so much money that they can, that like you said, there's still time in the window for them to go out and spend. Let's move on, Steve, and we can still talk about a little bit about Glimt if you've got anything else to say. But who have you got in second place? Who do you think is going to be their closest rival?
Yeah, I'm going to put the defending champions in second place in Viking. And, it wouldn't actually surprise me if I'm a little bit wrong with them. Wouldn't surprise me if they were a notch or two lower, because I have seen defending champions struggle sometimes. But again, logically, they just look like the second best team. What they did last season, they'll take a lot of confidence from that. They won the league. That can give newfound belief, can't it, sometimes? But they, again, very consistent sort of squad. They've not lost anyone of serious significance. They've only added a goalkeeper, Lubomir Belko from Žilina in Slovenia, £1 million. I've said for years they probably had a bit of a goalkeeping problem, actually, so maybe he can solve it. But I mean, look at what they did last season: 71 points. They scored a lot of goals. The most amount of goals was scored by Peter Christiansen, actually, who came good last season. But the key man, obviously, is Zlatko Tripic, who is at 31 years old now, maybe 32 coming up this year. He's a key man, 11 goals, 16 assists. They have to wrap him in cotton wool sometimes. He's crucial. But the whole team chipped in with goals. The defence, I think I mentioned it before, at times it's a back four of proper big guys. They had fullbacks who weren't, quick and small and lightweight. Proper old-fashioned fullbacks who are good on the ball. But when you've got a back four that's so big and dangerous, you become a set-piece machine as well. They use set pieces to their advantage last season, Viking, no doubt about it, with their height. Certainly not calling them the Arsenal of Eliteserien.
I was about to say.
But it you know what I mean? When you've got bigger bodies on the field, it's like using a three-man defence sometimes. You just have an advantage, don't you? Defending and attacking set pieces. So lots to like about them. They'll be very similar to last season. I don't think much will change. Same manager, similar group of players. They did overachieve a lot on their expected goals last year, Jonathan. So for those into those sort of metrics, might be thinking, is there a regression this time? They did score a lot of sort of low XG goals, like long-range shots or shots that went into the top corner of the net, but they do have the players that can do that. Everything went right for them last season, Jonathan. Can everything just go right again? I don't think it does. I think they dropped down by 10 points to about 60 points in this instance, which is usually about runners-up territory.
Yeah, they won it by 1 point. They kind of sneaked it in some ways. They had a way inferior goal difference to Glimt, scored way less goals and also conceded way more. So from that point of view, you could sort of look at it and say they've picked them to the post, but fair enough. You still got to do it to win it. Taking advantage, maybe like you say, the fixture schedule, both of them on 22 out of 30 games. So it's literally one draw that denied Glimt the title, essentially, and gave Viking the title. Both teams were 13 points clear, respectively, and 14 points clear of third place as well. So they were the two runaway teams in 2026. Steve, let's just talk a little bit about what made this Viking team so strong. You said about set pieces. You said about their fox in the box, the magician Tripic, who sort of pops up with goals and mercurial talent. But what else made them so strong last season? Let's talk about the managers. You don't tend to talk about the managers that much on this podcast. I want to hear some props for their managers because they've clearly done something right.
Well, yeah, this partnership seems to work, doesn't it? Bjart Lunde, Arsheim and Morten Jensen. I mean, we saw Djurgården win the league in Sweden, didn't we, with joint managers a few years ago? I think ultimately, yeah, they've got this combination right. They've played Viking football, which is sort of in your face, fourth usually 4-3-3, attacking football, which is what their fans like. They're well supported, of course, one of the biggest supported clubs in the country. So the fundamental big strength is the goals that they've got in them. Viking have always had goals in them, really, in I think all the years that we've covered them. Even that year they went down, I think they had goals in them. So they're going to be attack minded on the front foot. And I think last season it was one of those where they added a little bit of extra technical quality, which helped in the XG department. You know what I mean? They took all their chances rather than missing them. And that defense, like I said, I'm not saying it's completely rock solid, because it does give some chances away, more based on system rather than players. But they're very dangerous from set pieces. They've got some good technical midfielders, actually. Ruben Alter came in from Kristiansund quite well. Askilsson, I do like him. Joe Bell, I've always been a fan. Edvin Østbo, of course, in attack is still only 21, very young. In terms of the striker position, they've lost Nick D'Agostino, and then it's like a sort of any one of like Veton Berisha, who's usually injured, Mikkelsen, who has his moments, and then Peter Christensen stepped up last season. He wasn't really a striker, but became one and delivered the goods. So they've got a lot of goals in them. They'll generally be one of the better defensive teams. Strong at home. Negatives, though, big target on their back for defending the league. And then in Europe, they are guaranteed, Jonathan, to be at worst in the Europa League group stage for 2026-2027. They will play a Champions League playoff game, two-legged tie at the end of August. And if they win that tie, they'd be in the Champions League. But it's more likely, due to the coefficient, that they will probably get a very tough draw and get knocked out, and will probably end up in Europa League. But either way, they're getting eight group games, aren't they? Which, that's going to be a challenge. And unless you are used to doing it, it's so hard for teams. Even Glimt have suffered. So I think in the second half of the season, Viking could struggle a bit in that respect. They need a good start. They might get one. I think they will be right in contention come the start of August, mid-August, and then it might be a bit more of a struggle for them.
Let's just talk about the sort of new Champions League positions due to the ranking system. You've mentioned there, obviously, Viking and their European commitments. Can you just tell the listeners a little bit more about that and what it opens up, and also with the games still to come, what are the permutations potentially for this season's title race, and in general, what can we look forward to? Could there even be more spots available for teams before we sort of come to conclusion on Viking, and then look at a little bit at their transfers as well before we finalise?
Unfortunately, the coefficient's gone down this season. Norway coefficient struggled, which is mad, isn't it, with Glimt's run? But you get a ridiculous number of points for winning Conference League games and stuff. And sadly, Norway hasn't had a team in the Conference League this season that's done well or picked up easy wins in the Europa. Brann did quite well. So I think at some point soon, I think it is going to be this season where only one team will qualify for the Champions League, and it'll be the champions. Maybe two. I'm not sure. The way the coefficient cycle works can be complicated, can't it? But either this season or next season, it's going to be only back to one team again. But great opportunity for Viking. They'll probably never get as close to qualifying for the Champions League as now. They own, because of that Norway coefficient, they enter the final round of qualifying, and they only play league champions. So I'm trying to think what like the worst case scenario could be. Someone like Champions of Scotland, or I don't know, Olympiakos, something like that. Champions of Greece, I don't know, along those lines. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting battle at the top of the table. I think Viking will be, let's say, right up there, but I just see them dropping more points this season, Jonathan, overall, down to probably about 60. That could still be enough to win a league. It has happened. So let's see how they get on. I don't think a lot will change from them, though.
Klaassen, Svensson, Delanley, Saterbo, Bergsvik, Rugland Ree, goalkeeper from Bryn, 21-year-old, and a couple of others have left according to Transfermarkt Steve. They've also had £1 million expenditure on this keeper, Ludimir Belko. You said about 60 points maybe, but are any of those players that we should watch? Who should we keep an eye out for this season? Maybe young talents or players that they left that are going to be key?
And the goalkeeper, isn't it? This Ludimir Belko. Let's see what he's about, because that could actually be an area where they upgrade. They've never had a really good goalkeeper since I've covered Norwegian football, to be honest with you. Like, proper good. So let's see what he's about. I don't know anything about him at all, to be honest. So I'll wait and see. Players to watch. Interesting. I think Edvin Usbo, when he's injured again to start the season, but he should really kick on once more. And that midfield setup of sort of Askilson, Bell, Alter, Ruben Alte, I'd like to see him start even more games, to be honest with you, across the board. And then, of course, the player that everyone has to watch is Latko Tripic. He is so important. He reminds me of Armel Pellegrino when he was at Bodø Glimt. Technical wizard. If he gets injured for a significant portion of a season, they definitely can't win the gold medal and might even struggle to get in the medals. He's that important to the team.
A clutch player, maybe one that will be in fantasy teams again prominently this season. So you've got Bodø Glimt to win the league, Steve. You've got Viking in second place. We shall now come on to, I guess, from your point of view, it looks like you're thinking it's going to be very distinct first and second, and then maybe best of the rest. But let's take a look at who you've got in third place, Steve.
The team that I have got in third place this season is Brann. And this is a bit of a boring answer, really. Again, a lot of my predictions are quite boring, you know. There's almost like a template for predictions this season, and I've not deviated too far from them, but it is what it is. Brann are a good side. They are, and I'm expecting them certainly to be in the medal hunt again. Last season, they fell short of a medal, but they were in fourth place, 56 points. Tailed off at the end of the season, probably because of being involved in the Europa League. That can happen. Really, a lot of their fans would probably say they were the third best team, even though Tromsø finished above them. But, they were fourth. I think they can get to third this year. They've just got a good squad in general, I think. They've lost some players, which concerns me a little bit, Jonathan. Ivan Helen to Bologna, for example. Jafet Seri Larsen to the MLS. Emil Kornvig to a very strange transfer to Wyss in Poland. We talked about that on one of the Europa shows that we had. But, they've signed a few players as well. It's decent depth. And, to be fair, the manager, Freyr Alexanderson, did a better job than I expected this season. I wasn't sure about him, but he did quite well. And, if Brann are in the Conference League qualifying, and if I don't think it can be upgraded to Europa unless I don't know what the deal is with the Norwegian Cup stuff. But anyway, it's one of those where if they are not in a Euro group stage like Conference or Europa League, then I could see them potentially finishing even higher, because it's clearly that affected them last autumn. So if they get knocked out of the qualifiers, for example, then I think they'll do better in the Eliteserien. But I certainly see them in the top 5. I've got them in the top 3. Just look quite a solid team all round again, and I'm expecting them to. They've always been up there in the last few seasons, and they'll stay that way.
Yeah, historic club in a similar mold to Viking, aren't they, Steve? In the sense that they've been relegated recently within the last 10 years. It's quite a funny league, Norway, in that sense, isn't it? It's quite a few big teams, but it's also quite fluid. You get a lot of teams going down, and then they come up again, and then suddenly when they come up, they're a force to be reckoned with. And that's been the case with Brann over the last few years since they came back. Who could ever forget the scandals at Brann, all the kinds of shenanigans that went on back in the day when they were in crisis. But Steve, you've said they've lost a few key players that you're surprised about. What was surprising about that transfer from your point of view? We've seen them in Europa League action. I thought they were good value actually against Bologna. They were the victim of a red card that didn't go their way. I felt like in both legs, I thought they did a decent job, to be fair, and made a pretty good Serie A team look pretty average, in my opinion. What's your kind of feeling about where their strengths and weaknesses lie, and why would you say those key players are key in terms of their departures?
Well, my cat has just joined me, which is usually a good sign for a team, isn't it? Brann may be in for a very good season now.
That could be it.
History repeats itself.
What's the
But
story there? Just tell the listeners the story if anyone's new.
2020 Eliteserien preview podcast. We were talking about Bodø Glimt. I think I predicted them 9th that season. No one expected them to do much. And my cat, who sadly is departed now, Kit Kat, is just kind of, we called it the cat attack, but he was just startled by something. And it was quite a memorable moment on stream. But then Bodø Glimt went on to win the title, of course. And ever since then, I think any sort of cat appearance has been associated with good luck and good fortune.
Good omen.
Yeah, a good omen. So Brann, are they potentially the beneficiaries of it? If they win the title this season now,
are they the chosen one?
They know who to thank. But what was I surprised about with the transfer? How much money they got? £7 million for Ivan Helen. That's a lot of money for Brann. Unfortunately, they've lost a talented young defender, and that's a little bit of a concern. But they've got a decent defence still for me. Saltvet, Dragnez, Derove, Boake. I know he impressed you against Bologna, didn't he, Jonathan? And so it's not he's young enough Ghanaian who can really improve. The goalkeeper's solid. Dangeland, quite like him. He's no frills, does the job. Nothing wrong with doing the job, is there? So, it's a squad which has lost some players, but they've gained players as well. I do like this John Dagger Thornsteinsson on loan until June the 30th from Hertha Berlin. I like what I see from him so far. Crystal Mighty Ingerson as well. He's injured slightly at the minute, but I think he could fit in well with Brann. They've got a few injured players, the likes of Gudmundsson, Magnus and Castro, who've had no pre-season at all. When they come back fit, it's looking all right for Brann, really. 4-3-3 system. Sometimes I think their actual home pitch, which is grass, one of the few grass pitches in Eliteserien, there's not many left, doesn't help them, because I think they would play a lot better on artificial. But they've got to have what they work with. And, to be fair to Brann last season, 10 wins out of 15 at home, 2 defeats. You can't really knock that, can you? And they're so well supported by the fans as well. Arguably, this is the team, really, of passion, of supporters. They get a lot of fans in there. So, I think they're going to be certainly in the medal hunt. If they can avoid being in a European group stage, then that would bode well for them from September onwards. And they could be the team that really flies in the last... It was quite an extended run at the back end of the season, didn't they? Don't know how many rounds there is until after the World Cup break. But, I think Brann can go well. I've got them in third place.
Yeah, you're right. I did quite like Boyaki in both legs of the tie, actually. I thought he stood out to me, Steve. He's got an interesting backstory. He's a young Ghanaian talent. He actually was signed by Sheriff, Steve. He was at Sheriff in Romania, and then they signed him for 80k, and 6 months later they sold him for €1 million to Brann. So pretty good scouting there. I don't know how that's come about, but nice little windfall for Sheriff. And I thought he looked quite a good physical profile. Maybe can improve a little bit on the ball, but as a sort of a sturdy centre back, 20 years old, I don't know if he's going to be on your 10 to watch, but he'd certainly be someone I'll be keeping an eye on. I thought he really stood out in those games. Steve, one other player who sort of caught my eye a little bit. I know he's kind of returning and he's already been there for half a season, but Lungi Sorensen from Norwich. Is there anything you want to say about him? I know he's one of the most highly rated in the squad in terms of squad value. I know Felix Hornemeyer as well, potentially, I guess, would be a key player. Are there any other key players that you want to sort of highlight or ones to watch? Noah Holm, I recognise as well there. He's one that has never really quite done it, I don't think, necessarily, in past clubs. So it's surprising to see him sort of pop up at Brann, and he's in the past he's been around the block, hasn't he? He was very highly rated at Leipzig, I think, at one stage, and other clubs. But I just want to get your opinion on those sort of players, Logie Sorensen, for example, someone who's played at a good level in the Championship.
Yeah, I think he's a key player. Sorensen, Matheson, Felix Hornmyra, definitely. It's a decent midfield. I think Gudmundsson and Magnussen could be really important as well when they're back from injuries. Striker is maybe the concern. Hegebo, they sold him last summer, of course, as well, to West Brom. He was a big player for them. Noah Jane Holm, you wouldn't trust him at all. Don't rate his finishing, mate, at all, I'm afraid. I think he's had enough time now to prove himself. 25. He needs to change his game a bit, really. He's just not someone you'd be confident on to hit double-digit goals in a season, even if he's the main striker. He's shown glimpses. Hell, he does have matches where you think, yeah, you can see why the talent was sort of there and he was highly rated. But at the end of the day, his actual output, I might actually search for his actual career statistics now. But he just doesn't score enough goals. But at the minute, he's leading the front line. So that would probably be a slight area of concern for me. Let's look at his career goal. 208 career appearances, 60 goals. I'm just looking to try and find a double digit.
That's not too bad.
He hasn't had a season where he scored double digit goals in a league. He actually scored 10 goals in the Norwegian Cup last season, but I think one of those he had he scored something daft like 5 in one match. 7 goals in one match. That was it. Against someone called Rindal, they won 11-1. He scored 7 goals in one match. Flat track bully.
10% of his goals in one game, basically. Yeah. Career goals. Interesting stuff. I mean, Brann, from that point of view, like you said, you think they'll be key players, and maybe you're saying they're going to struggle for goals. I don't know if you've got a striker in mind. Maybe if it's fantasy team, you're picking your fantasy team. But they are a massively supported club. I think, you said that there's the potential that they'll get into Europe. You think they'll be qualifying for Europe. What will be the key for them to sort of get over the line? Is it they need to bring in some more players? Is it just the fact that the squad's not blended well enough? Is it not, how could they challenge the top 2 potentially? What could make your right?
Obviously, get a really good number 9. I don't think they'll lack goals, though, because the rest of the team makes up for it. Do you know what I mean? The rest of the attackers, midfielders, defenders pop up with the odd goal. So I don't think they'll lack goals. They'll create chances. Maybe Noah Gene Holm can prove me wrong and just be that clinical finisher for once. They've still got Bard Finner on the books. Player I've always kind of rated. He's more of an impact sub now. But in Castro as well, players that perhaps are good bench options. They could be a dark horse for even a title run, if Glimt and Viking are too distracted by other things. They could be the side that slips. There's 10 games, by the way, after from September onwards. So from the Champions League and Europa qualifiers onwards, there's 10 rounds left. If Brann are not in Europe at that point, that is a big advantage for them. But equally, they might be in Europe. They might be in the conference. And if they get in the conference, they could maybe do a run like you had gotten to do, Jonathan. So let's see. But I certainly think they'll be up there for the majority of the season. Top 5 material, medal material. And it's just a question, really, of how high.
Fair enough. Yeah, they are a supported team, well-supported team. Let's see how they can get on. Now, Steve, we'll keep an eye on your Cats prediction there as well, just to make sure if Brann do make a good start to this season, you know where to tune in and you can tweet us at Nordic Foot Pod. You can follow us on the YouTube channel as well, Nordic Football Podcast YouTube. And obviously like and subscribe, leave comments as well. And we always appreciate your feedback. So Meat Man's Cats team has selected Brann this season. So in 4th place, you've got a team who I've got quite a few questions about this club, to be honest. They're the ones that have really intrigued me in terms of where you're going to put them. They're probably the one team I looked at and thought, I wonder where you're going to have them. Not necessarily been firing on all cylinders in recent years, but still a massive club from certain perspectives, Steve. So you could say there's only one or two I could be talking about at this point. But take it away. Who have you got in fourth place?
Well, there's quite a few massive clubs still to come. This is kind of my, you know me, I'm a gambler at heart, Jonathan. And this is my sort of roll the dice prediction. This could look terrible at the end of the season. But I'm going to, because I've seen a lot of people put this side more mid-table. But I am going with Molde as my fourth place team. And this, as I say, I mean, it was a shocking campaign for them last season. 10th place, which is nowhere near good enough for them. But I do think they've got enough about themselves to be maybe in the medal conversation, top 6 conversation. And if they play their cards right, there's a lot of things to like about Molde this season, not least the squad on paper, for me, is quite strong. They've got resources. Let's not forget, we always talk about Bodø Glimt having these resources. Molde had decent European runs in the last 3-4 years. And I feel like they've always got a bit of clout in the transfer market, if you know what I mean. I could see them getting good players in the summer as well. It's a really loaded squad with depth too. Interesting situation with the managers going on in the background, but they've got no European football now. They got knocked out of the cup by Glimt. Played quite well, actually. Gave Glimt a better game than what a lot of these other big teams have recently. So I think that was an encouraging sign. It's one match in isolation, but I just look at a lot of, I've been doing my spreadsheet sheets and stuff, and I like matches are not won on paper, but I quite like what I'm seeing on this squad, and I just feel like it should definitely rebound. They will certainly rebound from 10th, and they could be a pleasant surprise compared. Most people putting them about 8th, maybe even 9th, but I'm putting them higher.
Yeah. Now you said there's an interesting situation with the managers. Can you just elaborate on that and tell us the backstory? Because I know that there's a bit of a Swedish link here as well. So talk to us about the development since they finished 10th. I mean, 10th, give us some more context on that, Steve, because that's unacceptable for a club like Molde, surely, to finish in that sort of position. And how are they fighting back and planning to fight back? What's happened off the pitch. And let's also look at some of the transfers, on the pitch this season, because they've although you said it's a bit of a bit of a gamble in putting them fourth. I mean, fourth should be the minimum for this club, shouldn't it?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking as well. If they can get back their standards again, then yeah, absolutely, they should have ambitions. So, let's talk about the manager's situation. Funny enough, 12 months ago, I was quite positive, wasn't I, about Molde's manager situation, and that just went totally, to the pits, didn't it? They finished the season with 2 caretakers, and they've kind of got a caretaker in charge now. The permanent managerial hire comes, I think, at the start of June. And he is someone called Sondre Chilman. And he is the assistant manager at Lech Poznan, right? So he will become the Molde manager at the start of June. Until then, Martin Falk, a manager you are very familiar with, Jonathan, is going to be in charge. He's going to then become the assistant manager when the new man comes in. So Martin Falk, who took Norrköping down from the Allsvenskan, but is a highly sought after and highly rated manager, clearly, because he was linked with a lot of clubs. He takes the reins for the first, 3 months. And I don't mind that, actually. I don't mind that because they know he's going to be here long term, but they know he's not like the full-time boss. Players sometimes do quite well in that situation. Falk is known for his, his systems, his energy, and the players might enjoy it. There's a lot of good technical players here might actually enjoy his system. I think there's better players here than at Norrköping. And then obviously the guy comes in from Lech Poznan, who again is decent. Molde have been kind of linked with this guy for a while, so I'm okay with the managerial situation at this point in time. It's complicated, but I think it could maybe work out. And who's to say, getting the new man in in June might just come a real boost at the right sort of time. If they've started the season well, he can come in and the ship's pretty happy. If they just need to pick up a little bit, he can be the one that gives them a kick up the arse sort of thing at that moment. So I don't mind that, Jonathan. I don't know what your thoughts are on things. I mean, we know Martin Falk did not impress you at Norrköping, but he's effectively now the assistant at Molde, really.
Well, I mean, it's not me who he needs to impress. He got relegated at the end of the day, and he took a massive club in Norrköping down, which was probably one of the biggest shocks of the whole season. So, yeah, it's not necessarily about impressing me. It's just about going from a terrible achievement there. Maybe circumstances behind the scenes could mitigate that. So, there is this trend these days. I think that it's a Vincent Kompany effect, isn't it, of managers who don't do well at a club. Suddenly it's about metrics, underlying metrics, or maybe it's just about popularity, Steve, or if your face fits, who knows? Call it whatever you want. But they've obviously seen something in him. So, far from me to criticise him personally. But yeah, on the face of it, his results were terrible at Norrköping. How do you think this could potentially affect the team, though? Because it's quite a rare situation where they're waiting for... Normally, it's a manager's leaving at the end of the season or something like that, where you sort of worry about an interim manager role and can they keep their focus. This is a bit of a weird case where they already know who the new manager is coming in. So, I mean, there's a chance he could be contacted them, for example, in the months to come. So it's a bit of a, you could have mixed messages. You need probably clear communication channels there between the two, because you could have one manager on one hand messaging him and telling him this, and then you could have the incoming manager potentially also messaging these players, trying to get to know them, and sort of that could be a distraction. How do you think that balance will be kept? Has there been any statements about that? And how do you feel about the transfers? I mean, I'm particularly intrigued by one transfer, which we'll come to at Molde, but how do you feel about what's going to get them into this fourth position? Is it going to be the Falk effect? Is it going to be this new manager? And how are they going to manage that balance?
It's going to be a very young coaching team. Falk, I don't think is he 31 now? 32? Sindre Shelmiand. It's a difficult one for me to pronounce. He's only 36, but he has worked under Jens Bertel Askew. He was the assistant manager at Gothenburg as well. He has managed IK Start for nearly 100 games between 2021 and 2024. He's the assistant at the moment at Lech to a bit of a legend, Niels Fredrikstad, who was the former Brøndby boss. He's learning pretty well, but it's a young coaching setup and it's quite a young squad. There's not that many oldies in Molde anymore. They've lost the likes of Magnus Wolf Eikram. I mean, Gulbrandsen's getting on a bit now, but in general, it's quite young. The new signing, Sivert Hansen's meant to be pretty good centre-back from start. They paid £1 million for him. Fredrik Christensen Dahl comes in from Godset. I always quite liked him, and he's versatile. He can play centre-back or left wing-back or whatever. Vebjorn Hoff in midfield. Victor Bender from Odense Youth. Still plenty of good players in the squad already, by the way. They got a new keeper, Mads Kickenborg from Anderlecht, 400,000, nearly 2 meters tall goalkeeper. He could be... They've had goalkeeping problems in the last couple of years. He can maybe solve that issue. And then the lad from Liverpool, who I've heard is meant to be pretty good. I've never seen him play much. Trent Cone Doherty, Irish youngster, and they've paid Liverpool £250,000 for him. Winger, mid attacker, whatever you want to call him. He could be exciting. He could be a bit of an X factor for Molde. So I like the signings. I do. And there's a lot of depth in all areas of the squad.
Yeah, this is the one I was going to sort of pick your brains on. Trent Carney-Doherty from Liverpool's academy, was prolific at PL2 level in the under-21s league in the Premier League there. Some people in his early parts of his career, Steve, obviously maybe just using the name Trent, thought he was destined for the first team. But I guess he's maybe not quite made the level. It's quite surprising to see such a young player shipped out to Norway from that point of view. And is this an emerging trend? Do you know much about how this deal's come about? I mean, I definitely think he's going to be an exciting one to watch for sure. And it does interest me in terms of how the Premier League 2 style of play can translate to a Norwegian environment, Steve. So it's certainly one I'm going to be keeping an eye on. I'm quite excited about this Molde team. I have to be honest. I think the depth they've got, some of the transfers they've brought in as well. I think they're a decent team, to be fair. So your prediction might not be, it might
The
not be
more I'm
terrific.
thinking about it, the more confident I am about this prediction. I'm looking at this squad and I'm thinking, yeah, this could be medal. Like if it plays is on paper. But by the way, they paid 3 million as well to Elfsborg, confirmed transfer for Jalal Abdullahi.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Now, I'm not saying that. I think that seems a lot actually for what he is, but he's
Very
only
lot.
21. Maybe they're on the right side of things. I don't know. They've got Oscar Speeton Neishater, and he's injured until May, but a very exciting talent. They've got some really good, promising players in this squad. If they get better, there's still a little bit of experience around, like your Christian Eriksen's of this world and Gulbrandson's if he stays fit. I think things are looking up for Molde, especially. I think they're not going to be a boring side. I think we're going to see modern coaching as well, which can be good and bad, can't it? But they're going to definitely try and play football the right way. And, they're not involved in Europe. That's a huge bonus for them in terms of scheduling. Full focus on Eliteserien. There's no excuses for not to be in the top 6, in my opinion. And really, they should be looking to try and challenge even at the bottom end of the medals.
Yeah, and in terms of Abdullahi, obviously he was at Elfsborg, quite a young player. He's still very young, like you said. I think it's a case of he didn't quite maybe adapt in that sense. There was other players around him, very raw at Elfsborg. My opinion on him is that I think he could actually dominate the Eliteserien. I think he could be one of those breakout strikers in the Eliteserien level. He's not necessarily incredible, but he's got all the fundamentals, and he's still young enough. I think the price tag's a lot, but I could also see them making a profit on it as well at some point. So potentially, if he hits the ground running, I could see a Datro for in a similar sort of style evolution where he starts to really attract maybe a Turkish club or a Belgian club or something like that, and maybe he gets flipped on and moves on. I think he could have a good season at that level. So he's still finding his feet, still quite raw, still quite hit and miss, inconsistent. But of course, that's what Eliteserien is for, to sort of develop those kinds of players, and obviously a lot of African players have succeeded in Norway for that reason. So they're given that development ground. Steve, you've done your top 4 now. As you mentioned at the top of the show, we've got differences this season in terms of European qualification. There's now 2 Conference League places up for grabs and 2 Champions League places. So it's a bit of a, well, it's not really a change because obviously the playoffs, how that works out, but still, those are your top 4. The next people you have, Steve, the next clubs you have fighting in contention. Let's move on to your 5th place team. Who do you think is going to be potentially challenging Molde for that final European spot? Then who have you got in 5th place?
I'm going with Tromsø in 5th. Not sure about them, to be fully honest.
That's a surprise.
Yeah, sometimes when lots are expected of Tromsø, they don't deliver. But yeah, I think they've got enough about themselves to be certainly in the top 6 conversation, maybe even looking at medals. A very motivated club, big rivals of Bodø Glimt. So, their fans have suffered a lot in the last 5. Imagine how their fans are feeling right now after Glimt beating Sporting 3-0 in the Champions League. But I feel like it's kind of has awoken Tromsø a bit, and they're desperate to win something. They're desperate to stay relevant in that region as well. And, it's done them some good in a way. I think it's a solid line. I mean, Jurgen Vic's done well here. 3-5-2 system. First team we're talking about that's 3 at the back, unless the new Molde manager employs 3 at the back. I don't think he will be. And that really sets them on a good, solid foundation. Defence has always been strong for Tromsø for several years now. They've got probably some of their best players are in defence and D-mid areas. Probably the question mark. They've managed to keep 2 or 3 really talented players, which I can't believe they've kept. Actually, rumor was they turned down a few big bids actually for these players. Which I'll mention soon. But yeah, it's looking all right. They've signed a few attackers as well. Let's see how that works out. But again, in terms of the European player qualifying, they enter Europa League qualifying whatever. And that is definitely a route into Conference League, in my opinion, if you play your cards right. So I could see Tromsø qualifying for that Conference League. And if they do that, that is something which I think would be a huge distraction. I think they'd struggle to deal with it, although it is only 6 games in the conference, isn't it? So let's see for Tromsø. If they that could impact them a bit with points in the second half of the season. They don't have as much depth as some of the other clubs up there, in my opinion, which can be an issue if you do get injuries. But they'll be solid, they'll be hungry, they'll be motivated, and I think they'll continue to do well, but they might lose a couple of players in the summer.
Yeah, you know what, you kind of sometimes do. I mean, the reason I said not surprised is because you do have a bit of a beef with Tromsø fans. I think you've had a few critics over the last year or so in terms of some articles you've written about them and maybe some XG debates that we've had about their performance levels. You're never too up on them. Some might accuse you of being a Glimt fan, I think, from what I've heard, Tromsø fans up there in the north. You're not the most popular on that side of the north. But Steve, when I look at, I mean, I kind of tend to contradict you a little bit here. When I look at this team, I mean, they've got 2 of the most valuable players in the league. Let's get your opinions on Jens Hjortødal and Sidi Kinte, Boubacar Sidi Kinte, because he's been linked with huge clubs. 19-year-old centre-back, Steve. I'm quite surprised he's not left yet, actually. But when I look at their squad as well, I see a few other players that I quite like. I like Varnerud, Alexander Varnerud. I still think he's going to have a big future. I think he's got real potential, in my opinion. He's only 20. He was at Västerås previously, and I think he's got development room. There's a few other players I do quite like. They've got a few Swedish players or players who've played in Sweden. Lars Olden Larsson, obviously, at Beko Häcken. And they've also got Victor Ekblom up front. They've got a few other players from Sweden as well, like I say. But talk to us about those 2 lads I've just mentioned there, those 2 young talents, because I think a lot of clubs will be maybe making that pathway to go and try and watch Tromsø this season.
This is actually a really young squad as well, with promise, the more I look at it. But yeah, I'm amazed they managed to keep Sidi Kinte. I mean, it was a great piece of scouting to get him here in the first place. 19-year-old centre-back. And then Jens Hjortødal, who I've mentioned quite a while ago, actually. Really, they're probably just too good for Tromsø right now, and may become too good for Eliteserien level. And I think it'd be really hard for them to turn down big deals in the summer. That's my issue there. I just don't see how they can keep them in the summer, Jonathan. We take it. I mean, they've done well to keep them in the winter, but the summer window is completely different. So that's a shame. It's a bit like Rosenborg were like this last year, weren't they? They had something good going, and then they lost 2 of their best players because the offers were too big to refuse, and the players wanted to move on. But yeah, those 2 are excellent. The lad from Västerås, Varnerud, again, very, very strong. Leo Kornic is an excellent player for them. They've signed Matthias Tonnesson from KFUM Oslo for over £1 million. It's quite a lot of money for Tromsø. Again, 22-year-old can play centre-back, left-back, left mid, whatever, even in midfield. Really versatile. Jesper Grunt's meant to be a decent signing. Daniel Brout's in there, another young, good talent. Yeah, this is a decent-looking squad, really. A couple of new signings. They've got in Troy Engstedt Niehammer from Aalesund for nearly £1 million. 19-year-old. Expected to kick on. So there's players that should improve as the season goes on. They probably can't keep hold of 2 or 3 of them, but the talent conveyor belt is kind of in good working order here for Tromsø. Decent system, 3-5-2. Can be obviously a difficult place to go. They are the most northerly professional football team in the world. 10 wins at home out of 15 last season. Conditions could be pretty brutal, really, depending what time of year you're visiting. Of course, it's full daylight in June. Never gets dark, but I'm just looking at the last 3 home games. They've got Bodø Glimt at home on the 1st of November, Viking at home on the 8th of November, and Start at home on the 29th of November. It could be full-blown blizzard and snow then. So, yeah, interesting team Tromsø. The more I look at them, the more confident I am about them certainly being top 6. I've got them in 5th place. That the potential of a European run is probably the main reason that I put them below Molde.
Yeah, I happen to think you're underplaying it, Steve. I think Kinte's a top level talent. I'll be stunned if he's there past the summer.
Mm.
I've read clubs like Chelsea are even looking at him, and that kind of level of clubs. Hyoto Dahl I haven't seen as much of, to be honest, so I can't really comment necessarily on his level, and his overall potential. But I know he's very highly rated. I think Tromsø are one to watch, and I think from my point of view, someone who likes to watch young, exciting teams, Tromsø are definitely going to be one. I think the derby with Glimt, it's got a bit of spice about it. It's got a bit of flavour about it, and it's good to see because that's those sort of rivalries keep the league fun and entertaining. So Tromsø, I've got my eyes on you this season to see what you can do. Steve, that leaves, well, there are some big clubs like you did say earlier, that are further down the league than they'd like to be, I think. But that leads us to your pick in 7th place before we get to the halfway point. You've got two teams here. One, I'll probably give it away a little bit, begins with an L, one begins with an R. But where have you got the team in 7th, Steve? Who have you got just above mid-table?
There's actually a mistake here, Jonathan, and it's all my doing. So I do have Tromsø in 5th, but I put it on the spreadsheet as down in 6th. There is another team I've got in 6th place, and that is Vålerenga. It's Vålerenga in 6th, Tromsø 5th, Vålerenga 6th is what I'm going with.
You need to switch it. At the moment, it says Vålerenga 5th.
I know. That's just a complete mistype error.
Sorry, listeners. Yes.
Yeah, it's all my fault.
Just clarify. You've got Molde 4th. Who have you got 5th?
Tromsø 5th.
And in 6th place, you've got Vålerenga.
And it will be Vålerenga in 6th, yeah. Vålerenga in 6th place. They did pretty well last season upon their promotion. And they finished in 6th. And I've got them staying there. I think last season maybe was, I think a fair reflection of them. And this year, they should be able to consolidate. They've added a couple of pieces to this squad. It's quite a stacked squad in terms of depth, which is what I really like. They've got a good manager in Geir Bakke, who, famed for that tifo back in the day, former Lillestrøm boss. But in the end, he kind of had the last laugh against them. Vålerenga Lillestrøm is going to be interesting, isn't it? This season now, by the way. But look, they're the team that basically handed the title to Viking. They beat Glimt back end of last season. And it was like an announcement package. It was like, here we are, Vålerenga, we're kind of back. We can beat the big boys again. We want to make a statement. We're hungry to show what we are. And they are actually a pretty big club, a very big club in Norwegian terms. From the capital city of Oslo. And there was many a time, especially when they had like Ronnie Dealer there, we were saying these guys should be challenging for the title. They should be challenging for the medals every year, the size of the club. Now, the state of play has changed in Norwegian football in that at the minute, the likes of Glimt, Viking, Brann, etc., are above them in the pecking order. But they're sort of not a bad second rung. We're going to see probably a 4-3-3 system, I think, again from Vålerenga. I'm not sure. It could mix around 4-2-3-1. But they've not lost anyone of significance, which is really big. And they've added some players, which I think will help them. And so based on that, if you're 6th the year before, you should be able to maintain that unless there's teams that sort of below you that can overtake you. And I don't see that. I think Molde are the only team I'm seeing overtaking them, and they will compare to last season. I think they'll finish higher than Sandefjord, definitely. So that's why I've got them in 6th place, Jonathan. I think they're in a decent place right now, and they can kick on.
Yeah, and like you said, they are a massive club. Steve, they've got a new signing who, you don't see this very often, has joined from Wycombe Wanderers. And he is, in fact, the most expensive signing in Wycombe Wanderers history, according to Transfermarkt. They signed him for €1 million from Viborg, and then they've sold him for less than 50%. 60% loss a year later back to Scandinavia to Vålerenga. He is Magnus Vestergaard, Steve. Is he going to add a lot to this team? And who do you see as the other key men that we should keep an eye out for? Vålerenga have always been a team that have produced well.
Well, yeah, Vestergaard. I mean, this just screams to me the sort of value signing that teams, that Wycombe have clearly overpaid for him. Wrong sort of deal. Maybe was that when they're in the Championship, maybe Wycombe? Did they go that far?
It was a year ago, so I don't think they were in the Championship a year ago.
I mean, that's a lot of money for Wycombe to be spending, and they've obviously trying to cut their losses, but he may well work out quite well for Vålerenga and add to this strong midfield. They've got the likes of Ambina in there, Bjørdal strong, Peter Strand, of course, Elias Hagen as well, was formerly one of your 10 to watch, I think, back in the day. So it's a good midfield. Players to keep an eye on. Ole Christian Saiters come in from Rosenborg on a free. Now, if he can stay fit, I think there's goals in this guy, whether he's starting or whether he comes off the bench. I like him. He's my sort of player. He tries hard. He's up for it. He always gives 100% out on the field. Doesn't let his head drop. Doesn't down tools. I like him. Grundtjern was a great signing last season from start, mid-season, and will lead the line as well. Elias Sorensen had a breakthrough year for him out wide on the left wing or right wing or whatever, or sort of A-mid, sorry. Thor Valdsen, another young talent. We're talking a lot about young talents, aren't we, already on this show? Philip Thor Valdsen is another one to really keep your eye out for. So, and they've got a 15-year-old who's supposedly going to be quite good as well, Gabriel Rajkovic. They nicked him from KFUM Oslo youth last year. But he apparently, 15-year-old, is meant to be one to really keep an eye on there. So,
I've just seen date of birth. I've just seen date of birth 2011, and that scrambled my brain. That is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's the first time I've seen 2011 date of birth.
I've got on my spreadsheet written down Wonder Kid ? Which is never the worst sign, is it, for someone? Defense might be maybe the Achilles heel a little bit. They've signed a lad who I've heard whispers he might be decent, Mario Gomez. He's actually coming in from Guinea-Bissau, a team there called Bissau Stars. Now, it's technically a loan, but that could well easily become permanent. I mean, we mentioned the lad at Tromsø. Could this be the next sort of breaker? You never know, do you, what you're going to get? But he could be brilliant, potentially. Who knows? He might be nothing. But I think the defence is probably the area that might just let them down a bit. The keeper's okay. But yeah, all things considered, a well-rounded squad, good manager, well supported. They've got the mojo back. Vålerenga can probably the sort of team Vålerenga who can beat anyone on the day, I would say.
So you got Vålerenga in sixth place. I like the player. He's injured at the moment, apparently, but I like the name Omar Bully. You definitely want a midfielder bullying you in that midfield, and named after bully by name. Is he a bully by nature? Who knows? It always surprises me as well, Steve, with Vålerenga, that they've only won the league 5 times. Based in Oslo, quite a big club, big catchment area. You'd have thought they'd be slightly more successful. It does surprise me. No league title in more than 20 years, which I find quite incredible. I was about to say astonishing there because I've been watching too much TNT Sports and listening to Fletch, who always says astonishing. But I will use a different word because I've heard that word so many times in recent days. Steve, if you had to pick one player, let's just dip into fantasy chat for a little bit to keep the listeners' brains alert. If you had to pick one player in your fantasy team that you've heard in the top 6 so far, who would it be?
Sorry, repeat that. I was just searching something up, Jonathan.
If you had to pick one player for your fantasy team out of all the top 6 teams that you've had so far, who would be your lock?
Oh, man. I mean, probably has to be Trippic, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. He's expensive, but the damage he could do to you if you didn't have him, it's like Mo. Remember when Mo Salah in the Prem was just every year he delivered, and for those who rolled the dice and gambled without him, didn't usually end well, did it?
Trippic is your man, because that's a tough choice there with some 6 very sort of good teams. Steve, 7th place. I think your table's in order now, hopefully. Take it away.
It's accurate now. 7th place, going with Rosenborg in 7th. Don't know what we're going to get with them. This could, Rosenborg could be maybe a notch higher, or they could be 2 or 3 places lower. I mean, if you imagine when we started doing these podcasts, Jonathan, and you said in the year 2026, I'm going to predict Rosenborg to finish 7th. You'd be like, what has happened to them, wouldn't you? I like the manager. I like some of the players. I feel like they had something good going last season, and they had to get rid of Sverre Nipan and Bornholm to Lille. They've had bad injury problems for the last 2 or 3 years. They've got to get on top of that. I mean, at the moment, like half the team seems to be in the infirmary or carrying knocks. 2 or 3 bright talents to sort of write home about as well. But this is not the dominant Rosenborg of back in the day. No way at all. There's better run clubs than them now. There's better squads than them now. And it's a state of play where we're expecting them to be in mid-table, which is where Rosenborg are. And at the moment, I don't see enough from them that they were dominant. They were really, obviously they had the really dominant era in the early 2000s, late 90s. But they had a really dominant period in the mid 2010s as well. The years of the Lord Bentners and that. At the moment, they're nowhere near that. Obviously, other clubs are a big reason for it. But Rosenborg at the moment, I think, will have good days, they'll have bad days. And the manager hopefully can get the most out of the players and get a good season out of them. But I'm just seeing them the top end of mid-table.
We had the technical director on the podcast last season, didn't we, Rosenborg, Steve? Really good interview. Go back in the archives on YouTube if you want to listen to that interview behind the scenes at Rosenborg. Talked a lot about what the transfer work they do and how they scout and many things like that. Talked about Sverre Nipan, of course, who's now at Manchester City, Steve, a year later. I feel like what I don't like about this prediction of yours, Steve, is it's like almost normalised now. Rosenborg are just a mid-table average team. It's not even. I don't even feel shocked at your prediction. It's like if you'd have put Bayern Munich 7th in the Bundesliga, I'd be shocked. But I don't even really feel shocked anymore, Steve. What does that say about Rosenborg? And what are the shoots of optimism? I mean, is that their ceiling? Could they? Have you seen any green shoots of promise that could, maybe get them up the table? Your cat's not even nowhere to be seen at the moment in time on the screen.
She's sleeping right next to me.
Gone to bed.
She's sleeping, which kind of sums Rosenborg up right now. They're sleeping giants.
Gone straight to sleep. There's got to be some promise for their fans because, I mean, let's face it, Steve, they're a massively supported club. Regularly, we get Rosenborg fans listening to this show based in different countries, engaging with us. They want their team to be great again. But is there anything that you can point to and say, yeah, all right, maybe this could help them improve? Or it doesn't sound like it from your prediction.
Last season, I liked a lot of things about them, and I really respected their run in the Conference League. They beat Mainz, remember, at home. That was one of the great nights of the season. Didn't quite manage to do it over the 2 legs, but I want to be positive about them. I do, because they're a massive club, and there's a huge part of history with them involved in it, and it would be in a way good to see them come back eventually. But the thing is, Jonathan, until say last season, if I asked your average Tom, Dick, or Harry in a pub round my way, name a Norwegian club, what's the biggest Norwegian club? I'm sure Rosenborg would be the answer, because they're a name that's etched into everyone's heads that way. But let's have some positives, shall we? Goalkeeper. I like my goalkeepers, as you know. They've signed a good one. Leopold Wallstadt. He's been signed from Aarhus. Yeah, 500,000. It hasn't worked out for him since he left the country. But for me, I think he always looked excellent in Eliteserien level, and I think that they've got a really good keeper in between the sticks. They've lost Tangvik, who was good. He went to Hamburg for nearly 3 million, but Wallstadt's an excellent signing. So that's
Wasn't
good.
he at Blackburn for a while?
Yeah, he was at Blackburn. Yeah, I think he did all right there for a bit as well, but it
I
seemed to
I
fall
rated
foul.
him.
Yeah, I don't really know why it didn't fully work out, but yeah. So I like that. I actually don't. I quite like the defense when it's at full strength. By the way, they've signed Jonas Svensson from Besiktas for a free. Now he's 33, but he's got 231 Rosenborg appearances in the past. He's won things here. I like that sort. I'm not into my veterans too much, but I do like the odd veteran. This is my sort of veteran signing. You know, bring someone back who knows the club, who's won things here. That can inspire a dressing room and lead at the back. But they've got decent defenders. Nemsik, I rate him. Nielsen Pereira, good left back. Mikkel Conradsen Sider is all right. They've got a couple of youngsters like Roston and Solheim Dahl as well. Vitry is on the books. Not a bad defence, actually, Jonathan. I like that. Not so sure about the midfield. Got a couple of new players in there. Johan Bakker, Mads Bomholt. Bomholt's meant to be decent. 20-year-old from Aalborg, 2 million. But let's wait and see. They lack a bit of depth in midfield, in my opinion. And then in attack, there's a lot resting on Dino Islamovic from me and Emil Conradsen Sider. Although there is an interesting signing on loan from Copenhagen for the whole season. Amin Chiaka, a young lad. Don't know really what to expect of him. Some have said he might be useful, but let's wait and see.
Well, you certainly got to be careful about how you pronounce their €2 million signing there, Steve, as you just said there. Bomholt, certainly said in a different way, could definitely raise our eyebrows, as you did when you mentioned them first there. I think it's best to go with his full name, I guess, Mads Bomholt. But yes, Steve, the one player I did want to sort of touch upon is, well, the one thing I wanted to sort of say with Rosenborg is there any kind of promise from the point of view of, although you've said, you've picked out some names there in terms of the squad, the management situation, because the manager was very highly rated at the start of last season, and I know that he's still a young manager, Alfred Johansson. Do you think he can sort of, like, with another year's experience in management, can he start to blend this club into his image a bit more, or do you think that this, do you think the squad's just not quite good enough? I mean, I really like Witchery as well. I think that, at one point he was the best right back in the league in Sweden by miles, before he got his move, and he's obviously come back now. He's 30, but just talk to me about the management side of things, off the field side of things, because I think one of the big criticisms about them, just looking at Witchery's career history since losing Jurgen, he went to Alkmaar, then Ludogorets, and now back at Rosenborg. Time flies, really. I didn't even realize he left in 2021. He's been gone quite a while. But Steve, the management side of things from my point of view is always where Rosenborg are trying to rebuild everything. They're trying to build. That's what the technical director said last season. They're trying to build the club up again, aren't they? Are they going to be any further than that in that project, or do you just feel it's still a work in progress with the management?
I like the manager, and I'm glad they've stuck with him. And maybe that just show that they're perhaps on the right track in terms of the regime. Historically, they might have panicked if results weren't going their way, but I don't see what else he could have got out of them last season. He nearly qualified for the Conference League group stage. They lost two of their best players mid-season. They had injuries galore. They eventually finished 7th. I think a true reflection of Rosenborg really would have been about 5th, actually. I think over the course of the season, they probably played about the 5th best team. But the results tailed off mid-season due to the losing the players and the Euro run. So I think Johansson did quite well. They've got to get on top of this injury situation at Rosenborg. I don't know what it is. I mean, at the moment, on Eliteserien Fantasy, 9 players are currently flagged up as potentially carrying a knock. And that just sums them up for the last 2-3 years, maybe even longer. It's just, they can never seem to field the full strength 11 enough, in my opinion. Another team with a grass pitch at home, does it help them or hinder them? I'm not sure it helps them sometimes, especially at the start of the season. Rosenborg only lost twice at home, though, last season. And the crowd, this is one of the biggest bathtub stadiums in the country, and the crowd will get behind them if they've got things to cheer about. It's up to the players now to deliver that. I've got them in 7th. And, I think probably the concern with this prediction is actually not whether they could nick a couple of places above that, but how if things go bad, they could be something like 9th or 10th, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Interesting stuff. So it could go either way.
Mm.
The final team before we wrap up part 1, Steve, in 8th place, is a team who weren't even in this league last season. And incredibly, won their lower division by 25 points. Should be a bit of a giveaway there if you do follow the second tier of Norwegian football. But take it away, Steve, your final team in this top 8 to wrap up part 1.
Well, let's start the car. It's not start. It is. It's Lillestrøm, of course, in 8th place. I'm predicting them. It feels like we've had this situation quite a lot. It's like Groundhog Day, Jonathan. Like a big club gets relegated when they shouldn't. They absolutely smash the Obos, come back up, and then usually get in the top half. It's the same cycle, isn't it? All the time. And I think Lillestrøm will continue that cycle. The Invincibles of 2025 have come in the league. And I mean, I was looking back at my spreadsheet of Lillestrøm in 2024. And I can't believe that team got relegated. Like, it's honestly one of those situations. It should have been far too good to go down. I don't know how it materialized. It's almost like Spurs in the Premier League this season. It's kind of crazy, but it is. They went down, and as expected, they came straight up at the first time of asking with what I do believe was a record points tally, unbeaten campaign. They were far too good for Obos, and you can see why. I mean, most of the squad. I think if they had been in the Eliteserien last season, they probably would have finished about 10th. To be honest, that's where I see from Lillestrøm's perspective. So basically, you've got a team which, they're promoted, but they would have been near on the bottom end of mid-table last season anyway if they're in this league. The manager's done well here. There's a story behind him, of course. They've signed some. I like what they've done. They've come up and they've consolidated by signing some good players as well. So all things considered, they're going to be hungry, fired up, back in the league. They don't want the 2024 to happen again, do they? They'll be desperate to finish above Vålerenga. Not sure when they're playing each other. I'll have a look, actually, because those matches have got to be well worth watching this season. The huge rivalry between those sides. It's actually round 5 Vålerenga, Lillestrøm on the 19th of April, so we don't have too long to wait for that one. And I think they'll be absolutely fine. They are going to lose some matches, but it'd be interesting to see how long they can stay unbeaten for.
Yeah, and what does it say, Steve, about this this trend that you've identified? That teams tend to come down, have an unbelievable year. I think there was even nearly an unbeaten season once, wasn't there, in the last
Brann, I think,
years?
as well. Brann might have been unbeaten or lost one game. Yeah.
Big teams go down, they come straight back up, and next thing you know, they're challenging for the title or challenging for honours, like Viking. What does that say, Steve, in your opinion, about the league below and also Eliteserien and the link between the two? Because is it a sign that, maybe as a tactic, if you're a mid-table team, I mean, if I'm Haugesund or someone like that in the past, maybe I'm thinking, let's just get relegated, clean house, take a year off, come back the season after, smash the league and get some confidence and go again. Maybe it's the smart sort of tactic. What does it say about the link between the two divisions, and how does that factor into your prediction for Lillestrøm in terms of how they'll bounce back?
I don't think Obos and Eliteserien are as wide apart as they used to be. I think Obos has increased the gap a little bit. They used to be miles apart. I think what it does show is how competitive the Eliteserien's been. That for this to have happened, and let's go back maybe 6-7 years now, the likes of Viking, Brann, Lillestrøm twice, Vålerenga have all gone down. They're far too good to go. They're far too big to go down, but it happened. And it just shows you if you have a really, really poor season, below par season, anyone can go down, really. That's how competitive this league has been. So that's what I take from it. But Obos, whilst it's improved, if the first time of asking, these big clubs should always have no problem because just simply resources. So you don't want to linger down there too long, do you? But they've always come back at the first time of asking. I think nearly always won the league as well. So that's what it tells me how competitive Eliteserien was.
Yeah, and finally on Lillestrøm, I mean, you said that the manager's, you said the manager's got an interesting backstory. Tell us a little bit more about that, and also, Steve. I mean, I'm looking at some of their signings. Pontus Dahlberg there from IFK Göteborg. He's been around the block now. He's 27. Starts to tell you how long we've been doing this, Steve. I remember when he was like an upcoming talent, 18, 19 at IFK breaking through, and now he's been sold. So. Yeah, we can talk about that on the Eliteserien or Svenskan season preview, I guess. But someone who maybe just didn't quite make it at the top level, played at Watford for a while, despite the sort of like the early career hype that he had. He's come in. There's a bit of a Swedish influence in some of their signings as well. Camille Yabara, who has come in from Elfsborg. They've got a few others that have sort of been around the block in different leagues, Steve. Yeah, but mainly talk to us about their manager and what kind of job he's done. He's been I've seen him talked about on social media, for example, just doing quite a fine job, and a bit of an interesting story he has.
Hans-Erik Odegaard, Martin Odegaard's dad, was the joint manager at Sandefjord for quite a long time, but then decided to take the reins at Lillestrøm last season, and he's never lost a game, any competitive game, since he's been at Lillestrøm. They've won the Norwegian Cup in December. They are the current defending Norwegian Cup champions. The way the cycle works out, they actually played the final after the third round of the current competition was in. So it was a crazy situation. They could have won the final and been knocked out of the next competition before they won the final. So it's crazy. But yeah, he's never lost a game. He's never tasted defeat. I think they're on a ridiculous run of something like nearly 20 games won in a row in all comps. So they can't be heading into the season in any better form, can they? So fair play to him. He's brought a good attacking breed of football to Lillestrøm. And, suddenly, it was obviously devastating for them that they got relegated. But they may well now you bounce back, don't you? You reset, and I think everyone's expecting them to be having no problems avoiding relegation this time, and the sort of team that no one really wants to face, because on the day they probably can beat anyone.
Fantastic stuff, Steve. So I'm just going to recap your predictions for the top 8. 8th place, Lillestrøm, like you said, Mr. Odegaard, Martin Odegaard's dad in charge. Newly promoted side, Rosenborg 7th, a team that, how can they be predicted 7th? Listeners, tweet us, let us know your thoughts on that one. Can they look any better, or could it even get worse, as Steve has said? In 6th place, Steve, you've got Vålerenga. The table's changed. 5th place, you've got Tromsø. 4th place, you've gone for Molde. 3rd place, you've got Brann. 2nd place, the reigning champions Viking. And 1st place, your prediction this season is Bodø Glimt. Before we wrap up, Eliteserien fantasy code. I'm going to drop it now. And then I'm going to also ask Steve to drop it at the start of the second part of this episode, because why not promote it twice? If you are playing Eliteserien Fantasy, obviously type Eliteserien Fantasy into the Google browser. The link should come up wherever you are in the world. It's quite a popular game now, Steve. I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that in part 2. But if you have got the code now, you've heard some of the names, some of the players to maybe keep an eye out for. P0IU79 is the code to join the Nordic Football Podcast Eliteserien Fantasy League. Steve, you'll have to remind me maybe who won the league last year. But anyway, P0IU79, the code to join our Eliteserien Nordic Football Podcast League. Hundreds of entrants. I think I finished somewhere around 200 last season, having rarely changed my team. Had no time for it, unfortunately. Maybe this year I'll give it a bit more effort, but we'll see. One thing, Steve, I will say actually before we wrap up part 1, is I've noticed that the One Football stream on my TV, Steve, I've noticed that, not TV, but I've noticed that you can actually cast it, One Football, and watch Eliteserien Eliteserien Football. And I'm hoping to do a bit more of that this season, because there was a few games towards the back end of last season I watched that I found intriguing. So the opportunity to watch it on UK TV is something, I don't know if that's still continuing in OneFootball, but we'll talk about the Eliteserien in part 2. Thanks for listening. Part 1, we shall see you after this short break where we'll recap the rest of the league. Who's going to get relegated? Who's going to be fighting to just survive in this league? Join us after this break. Welcome to part 2 of this season preview episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. The Eliteserien 2026 season is here. Steve has corrected me in the break, politely and kindly, in his usual manner, a gentle manner, about OneFootball, who we don't normally name drop. The only people we name drop normally, Steve, on this show is our partners, Wyss Huddle, who we do have a partnership with. You'll have seen our latest blog. Unfortunately, they tend to delete our blogs after a while, which is a bit of a shame, because I did try and find one of my archives and it's been deleted from the website. But at the same time, the most recent blog is available to look at. It's a Swedish themed blog this month. It was about talking about the Under-19s League in Allsvenskan. But every month we do write a blog for Wyss Huddle partners. OneFootball are definitely not our partner, Steve. So if anyone from their marketing team's listening and wants to get in touch, then they can. But you have identified, just as I was saying, I might be getting into it, that there's a few changes this year and also a few changes to fantasy. So take it away, Steve. Let's talk about fantasy a little bit. Let's talk about where we can watch games in the UK and abroad.
Well, for the last I heard that OneFootball, sadly, and I know a lot of people around the world are watching Eliteserien on OneFootball, don't have a deal now with Eliteserien apart from those in the UK. So those can watch it in the UK, don't think anything changes. But the rest of the world is a bit up in the air at the moment, which that would be stupid for the league, I think. There's been a broadcasting change over the winter for this new season. And when that happens, I just, you know what I mean, Jonathan? I hate it when that happens because things just seem to change sometimes. There's teething problems is the best way to politely say it. And I think the same's happened with fantasy. I mean, about a couple of weeks ago, wanted to get into the fantasy. I'd heard the game was up and running. I mean, from my perspective, there's no English on the site, which surprised me because the last 5 years has always been an English section. And then I had to log in. I had to create an account with something called TV2, which is the broadcaster for this year. But that was complicated because it didn't let me sort of link my account from my previous email unless I had like a Norwegian postcode and a Norwegian telephone number. So I just ended up putting in some random numbers and figures to eventually get me over the line. But it wasn't easy. I've got Google Translate on the go. It was quite a challenge. And I'm surprised because a lot of English-speaking people have played this game over the last 5 years. You would think they would want to cater to them, really. In the summer, it's a summer league. So at the minute, it's quite complicated, I think, the fantasy section. I've got there in the end. Of course I have. But it will put off some players for sure.
Yeah, you've nearly put me off just explaining it there, to be honest. Sounds like more hassle than it's worth. All this is it a quest for data, Steve? Is it sort of a data grab, or I don't know? I mean, Norwegian phone number. I don't know how you got around that one, but sounds very complicated. But we won't dwell on it too long. I'm going to just repeat the fantasy code again. If you do manage to navigate all those hurdles that Steve's just identified, P0IU79. He said Trippic is the key man to putting your team from the top 6 at least. Steve, we will ask you another question similarly in this part 2, but let's take it away. Who do you have in 9th place, Steve? We're in the mid-table here. You've said yourself, there's only 2 teams you think in this bottom half of the table that are guaranteed safety. The rest you think could potentially be relegation candidates if they don't have their house in order. So let's look at your 9th and 10th team, Steve, that you think will be safe and just sort of paddling water this season, treading water, should be fine. And should be okay. Who have you got in 9th?
Yeah, 9th and 10th place teams are actually 2 bitter rivals. I've got Fredrikstad 9th and Sarpsborg 10th. Don't see either getting involved in the relegation tussle. And in terms of their potential, they're looking up rather than down, I don't see any of these teams I've mentioned now below the top 10. I just don't see it. And starting with Fredrikstad, Norwegian Cup winners, of course, a couple of years ago now. Famously pushed Crystal Palace very close in the Conference League qualifying, only lost 1-0 on aggregate. And, they're a big club. They're well supported, got one of the biggest grounds. I think there's quite a lot of ambition there. And, they're going to play sort of a 3-4-3 system. They can be solid, tough to break down. They have lost some defenders over the last sort of 8 to 10 months, which concerns me a little bit. And I think there's a lot riding on Johan Nunes up front for goals, perhaps. But in general, I think we're going to get a solid campaign from Fredrikstad. Again, another one of those teams. Catch them on a good day, you wouldn't want to face them, Jonathan. But I just think they lack probably enough quality and consistency to be breaking into the top 6.
Yeah, and you rightly pointed out the Palace games. I enjoyed those games, in fact. I thought they put in a good showing. And, actually, I've got to say, Steve, and we had this discussion last week off air, the level of Eliteserien, we have to talk about it whilst we're doing the season preview. In my opinion, it's really gone up, and I think they've put a lot of the other leagues to shame. I think the level of Eliteserien has gone up, and I think there's multiple evidence to support that. Fredrikstad, okay, I know Crystal Palace at that point, they were about to sell Richie Eze, if you remember rightly. Kassim mine's back to sort of Augustish time, and he was missed out of the squad, wasn't it? And it was all that hoo-ha. But Palace without Eze proved to be still a very good Premier League team. And Fredrikstad did a good job, even though they missed out in the end. We talked about Brann in part 1 and how they gave Bologna a bit of a bloody nose, didn't quite qualify, but at least put up a good fight. Glimt all the way to the Champions League, nearly quarterfinals, potentially. I think, Steve, the level has gone up of this league, to be honest. And Fredrikstad are another example of that. How do you expect them to build on the last few years they've done? I know you said it's going to be a mid-table season, but what have they done internally to sort of try and improve this year? Is there any specific changes that you like in terms of the squad?
Well, it was obviously quite a big thing for them to come back in the league after so long away. And it's not for them to now be in a conversation where I'm saying I don't think they're going to be anywhere near a relegation battle is, I think, a decent achievement from where they were 5 years ago. Defense is always going to be their strength, I think, because of the structure of the team. And they're built for being solid and awkward to break down. Of course, they lost the lad from Stade de Reims last year, Fall, I think it was. They've lost Valedzi to Nashville. Stian Mulder's on his bike now. Goalkeeping situation as well. Jonathan Fisher was the best goalkeeper in the league for me. He went to Metz. Martin Borsheim is in the sticks. Young lad, 21, not bad. Decent keeper. But he's not Fisher's level. That was a blow. They have signed Alexander Andresen from Starbek, left wing back, and he's meant to be very, very promising. So I think he's going to go really well. They've actually nicked another lad from Starbek, Joachim Nijveen, on the other side, right wing back. But I think he's more of a development prospect. Frederick Holm from Kongsvinje. Poor Kongsvinje, by the way. Shout out to them. They've been knocking on the Eliteserien door for years, and now finally their squad's been gutted. Everyone's been raiding them, Jonathan, from the Obos. Frederick Holm, one of them. What else have they got? A couple of signings in midfield from Sweden, actually. Samuel Leach Holm from Häcken. Max Nielsen from Landskrona. Spent nearly $1 million on those two. Leonard Owusu's back recently. Partizan Belgrade loan for another season. That's good. Liking that. Solomon Alusu as well in defence. And I mentioned Nunes up front. He was a big summer signing for them from KFUM, of course, last season. I think they're going to rely on him for goals. Henrik Skogvold has been scoring goals in pre-season. And I don't know whether to believe this hype, because we had this a couple of years ago with Lillestrøm with him. Everyone's like, he's going to be the big breakthrough talent. And he didn't deliver. But maybe now he will. I'm not sure. He needs to do it in proper competitive games. Although I say that, he did score in the cup against Sarpsborg. Doesn't get much bigger than that for them, does it? So maybe we're going to get this version. If Skogvold really is true beast up front, then you have him and Nunes in the team. They do have a double pivot weapon for goals. And Fredrikstad could well be better than 9th, actually.
Leach Holm was a dark horse for me. He'd definitely be a fantasy pick, potentially. He's been around the block in Sweden, has been at a few clubs, and I think always had potential. I think in Norway, well, is Norway a better league than Sweden? I don't know. Is it a higher level? Maybe. But I think he could do a job in Norway, so I'd be very intrigued to see how he gets on. Steve, just one final thing on Fredrikstad. They lost a player to MLS, in fact. Maxwell Waledzi. He's already played a few games in MLS this season. Do you think he'd be missed? It looks like he's a centre-back.
Yeah.
Sold for a good chunk of money, actually, for a club like Fredrikstad, who've recently been no boss. 1.3 million euros. Do you think he'll be missed?
Yeah, I do. He was a key defender for them. And, until they, find a guaranteed replacement, maybe this Frederick Holm can be the lad. They do have decent defenders already, like a Wusu of this world, and Ulrich Fredriksson, of course, is strong. But I liked Valedzi. He was a big threat from set pieces as well, and a big presence at the back, I think, will be missed.
You had Fredrikstad last season in 10th place, funny enough, and this season you've got them in 9th place. Now let's look at who you've got in 10th place, Steve, because just as a bit of an omen for you, by the way, the team that you had last season in 10th place, in 9th place, were relegated. Oof. So is that an omen for Fredrikstad? Who knows? But in 10th place this season, Steve, you've got, take it away, who have you gone for?
Yeah, they're a bit of rival Sarpsborg, who Fredrikstad have just beaten in the cup. Sarpsborg at times have even flirted with relegation in the last 2 years, midway through the year, and you're thinking, what's going on there? But I look at the squad and I'm thinking it just can't be anywhere near the drop zone, surely. They definitely scream to me mid-table mediocrity. I think they'll be up and down all year, mixed results. Back in the day, remember, like the Charlton of the Premier League, always sort of around mid-table, sometimes on the beach towards the end of the season. The strange one here is the manager. It's one of the few managerial changes, actually. Martin Foyston, who we hardly even talked about him, did we, last season, was he's left the club. And Evan Sell, a young manager, has come in. I know nothing about him at all because he's come from the Norway under-19 setup, under-18 setup. So this manager, I think it looks like it's going to be 4-3-3, but I don't know much about him at all. It's a difficult one. This could be a complete flop of a hire, or it could be a mastermind. I don't know. He's his first proper club job, so let's see how he gets on. But he does have plenty of players to work with. He has weapons to work with, and he's this squad. I just look at it and it just screams to me around mid-table. I've got him 10th, and that is a team that for me will not be in any trouble with the squad that they have.
Foyston was obviously at Osters before that, Steve. So it's a short tenure.
Yeah, it was a very short tenure. I don't think he was sacked as such. Just the contract expired. They didn't want to renew him. Don't know what the deal.
Was he an interim then, or what?
Well, he took over from Christian Mikkelsen mid-season. Mikkelsen, who I thought would do quite well at Sarpsborg. I thought it was a great fit of a club. Didn't work out. Foyston came in, took them to the cup final against Lillestrøm. They lost it. So I didn't think he did a lot wrong. I don't know quite why they didn't go with him, or maybe he didn't want it. I didn't look into the ins and outs, in fairness. So you say they've got this new manager in, Evan Sell. Let's see how he gets on with Sarpsborg. It's there's as per usual plenty of sort of ins and outs, maybe less than normal actually. But there's enough quality here all day long to avoid any trouble. Sigurd Rosted's back. Remember back in the day, I used to rave about him. He's 31 now. That's how old this podcast is now. Come from Toronto on a free. Klaus Nierkuri from Haugesund, one of the few Haugesund players who kind of did anything good, really. Right back, centre back, more of a right back now. They've got Noah Williams from Kongsvinger, yet another Kongsvinger player. We're going to talk about a lot of those players now. A winger for $500,000 actually. They brought him in. So yeah, I think ultimately, remember they spent $1 million on Michael Opoku from Lyngby last August as well. So still going on strong. The captain's Joe Inge Birgit. He's still there, 35-year-old Fox in the box. And he will have his games where he scores because he's in the right position to hit the back of the net. Decent enough midfielders. Yeah, I think they'll be all right, Sarpsborg. 10th place feels about right for them.
Big Birgit, man, you once used to criticise heavily on the show. You've warmed to him. It seems like you're softened in your old age. I remember the years of scathing attacks on this poor fellow, Steve, when he was at Malmo and places like that. He used to be the subject of your wrath, and now you're cuddly. You almost referring to him like a cuddly sort of toy in a way. Maybe that's a sign of maturity, meat man over the years.
But he's matured as well.
I think what I quite like to do, Steve, is we should hire someone to clip some of the archives of your comments on him in
we don't want that.
2017, 2018-ish. Very different comments to now over the years, just to show your development arc as a character, how you've grown and matured. But Sarpsborg in 10th. Good luck to them. Let's see what they can do and if they can push any higher, maybe potentially. 11th place, Steve, is a team that, for me, pound for pound, was one of the most exciting storylines last year. Found them very intriguing in many different senses. Tried multiple times to get someone from the club on the podcast, but they weren't that welcoming, I don't think, really. They weren't that keen. Usually smaller clubs, Steve, are quite open to come and have a chat with us, but they were a little bit guarded, weren't they? I don't know if it's maybe related to... maybe it's something to do with the song, the YMCA. I don't know if maybe it's fun to stay there, but not so fun to invite them there. But take it away on.
Well, I'm predicting 11th place, KFUM Oslo, and I've seen a lot of predictions putting them in the relegation zone actually. So you'll have
to explain. Sorry to interrupt. You'll have to explain that YMCA comment just for listeners.
Well, they're basically. You probably might actually explain it better, Jonathan. Because they are, I mean, there's a few sort of clubs linked with the YMCA worldwide, right? And they're the Norwegian version of it. But there's strong working class background here at the club. And, you know, what they got promoted 3 years ago, small stadium. They couldn't even play in their own stadium for the first few matches, of course. And, you know, they've done really well for themselves. And, huge player turnaround this winter. Loads of new faces in. I'm astonished they've kept the manager, Johan Moisgaard. And that's the main reason I've got him 11th. If he was out the door, I probably would be predicting him to go down. I think he's a brilliant manager. He was linked with the likes of Molde, teams like that. I think he absolutely deserves a bigger job than this. Maybe he'll get it during this season. But whilst he's still at the club, for me, KFUM Oslo will be fine. They've already just had a cup scalp. They beat Tromsø in the cup. That's a good start to proceedings. They've started the season really well, both the last 2 years, and then faded badly in both instances, especially last season. In fact, it was quite an alarming run to end the season. I think they only won one of their last 14 games, although there were a lot of draws in that. So I can see why there's a lot of negativity towards them, thinking if you start this season with that sort of form, you are in trouble, aren't you? But I think under this manager they'll do enough. Their expected goals against metrics have been brilliant the last 2 years. For a lot of last season, I think only Glimt were better than them in that regard. So they're an absolute pain in the arse to face defensively. Well set up, structured. And it's one of those, like, you look at the team and all right, maybe the talent on paper is not amazing, but they're a system team. But the sum of the whole team will make them much harder to play against than some others because of how good the manager is.
Yeah, they finished 12th last season, Steve. They actually averaged the 7th highest possession in the league, which is pretty impressive for a team that is quite a sort of a minnow, you could say, in terms of expected goals as well. They were actually top 10. The interesting thing I find, Steve, is just a bit of a background. Yeah, like you said, the YMCA link is obviously, listeners who are familiar with the league will know this. Obviously, it's not a secret. Talked about a lot last year as well. They're based in downtown Oslo. but they actually were formed as a sports branch of the local YMCA in Oslo. So they have different departments in different leagues, track and field, volleyball, different sports. Sorry, so they've got a very interesting backstory, and they were promoted, as you say, in 2024, and they've just got quite an interesting vibe. I like the shirt as well. The mix of blue and red. You got a bit of a weird. The kit's a bit niche in my opinion. Even the kit is it's a bit of a throwback. I think it reminds me of like old Bayern Munich shirts from like the 80s and 90s maybe. Or, I just like the vibe, to be honest. Like you say, a small club. They do have a bit of a Gambian contingent as well. They've got a few good players, to be honest, Steve, and some big signings as well, in name at least this summer. Particularly one from Molde. But talk to us about, you've literally just said there that the difference between them being maybe relegated in your predictions and having them where you've had them is the manager. So just explain maybe the manager's style a little bit more about him. Tell us a little bit more about, do you think he'll get a move? Why is he so highly rated? What kind of, what's he done at this club to sort of earn your plaudits in that way?
Well, both seasons, certainly season number one, everyone had them finishing rock bottom, and they completely defied expectations. Last season, for the most of the year, they tailed off badly. Again, they were much higher than most thought. So I think that when you're overachieving, he's getting the most out of the players, and I think one of the reasons for that is the system that he's using, 3-4-3. Like I say, with a defensive focus and then sort of a counter-attacking vibe. Johan Nunes was a big player for them, not going to lie, and it was a big blow that they lost him to Fredrikstad. So that's a big problem. In attack, they've signed Rasmus Eggen Vinje from Stabæk, $500,000. He might be useful. To be fair, I might be doing the squad a bit disservice, and even if a different manager was in charge, I think I'm probably keep having to stay up because look in midfield there. Magnus Wolf Eikrum's coming from Molde. All right, he's 36 now, but he's still technically good, and he's going to be a brilliant presence to have in the dressing room. Surely, someone like that. Magnus Grodem got plenty of experience. They've signed another lad, Kongs Vinje again. I mentioned here. Kongs Vinje have hardly got any players left. Martin Tanyan Vinjor. He could be useful. There's some of these lads I don't really know much about. Mustafa Najra Fadde from Vålerenga youth, 18-year-old. They've signed 2 goalkeepers. The defence stays pretty secure, though. I like that. Only 1 new defender in. And they've only lost 1 significant defender, really, and that was Matthias Tonnesson to Tromsø. They actually sold a player at Luton Town called Sverre Hakami Sandal. 1.3 million to Luton. He still hasn't made an appearance for Luton, Jonathan. And I don't know why. I was amazed they got this amount of money for him. Like, he always seemed all right, but not over £1 million worth. So I don't know whether Luton might have just had a shocking deal here and KFUM have robbed them blind. But that looks good business for KFUM. He never struck me as, mega key to the team. Decent, yes. But if you're getting 1.3 million for someone like that, then fair play to them. They'll be solid. They'll be tough. I've got them 11th. And watch for them to start the season decently well. And historically, they've been really good in sort of the mid-stage of the summer as well. So KFUM will be all right, I think.
They also have, Steve, the 3 NGs. Not 1, not 2, but 3 NGs. Mamadou Lion NG, Bilal NG, and Musa NG. So keep an eye out for the NGs at KFUM Oslo, who you have to finish 11th. We're starting to get closer to the relegation zone, Steve. Teams that you think will drop out. We've got 5 left. And in 12th place, delighted to see this team in 12th place.
I have gone with Christensen.
You actually did predict them in 12th last year as well, Steve. So 2nd year in a row that you've gone for this team. And for anyone who has a long-time listener to this pod, if I was to say the word that they're my boys, you should know who I'm talking about here, Steve. Who have you got?
It is KBK. It is Kristiansund, and I'm not feeling particularly optimistic about them, Jonathan, at all. But ultimately, I just looked at the rest of the teams, and I thought there's going to be 3 or 4 worse than them. In perhaps certain other years, I might have predicted them to go down, and I have seen a lot of relegation predictions for Kristiansund, Jonathan, I might add. But I didn't join the bandwagon. It's not always the thing to do, is it? Because they only just survived last season. I think there's concerns we are now getting to the teams where I've got a lot of concerns about. That's the thing. There's kind of potential holes in everywhere. But at the same time, there could be players that surprise you with Kristiansund. The manager, I think, did well last season here. Amund Skiri did a solid job with them. It wasn't enterprising football by any means, but they got enough results about themselves, especially away from home in the early part of the season, to deliver. A lack of goals is my biggest concern for Kristiansund, though. I just look at this team, I'm like, where are the goals coming from? So they need someone to stand up and be counted in that way, because if they do go down, it will be their Achilles heel. But I think they can be better than 3 or 4 teams, which is why I've got them in this spot. But I'm not overly optimistic.
Now, they've not really made much money in terms of sales, but they've not really spent much money either. Quite a random, would it be fair to say, sort of a mishmash of players, in fact, that they've brought in? No real big standouts. Is there any names? If I'm my determination this year, Steve, is to get someone from Kristiansund on this podcast, if I can. If I'm getting a Kristiansund shirt, or maybe even go and watch them, but if I'm getting a Kristiansund shirt this season, Steve, who am I putting on the back of my shirt?
Maybe Mustafa Aija. He has been scoring some goals in pre-season, and he might have to lead the line 21-year-old. Look, I think you kind of sum it up there. There's not like 1 or 2 players, and you're like, they are absolutely crucial to this team. That might be a good thing, by the way. They're not over-reliant on someone. It's more of a sum of the parts sort of thing. I do like a couple of signings, actually. Heiner Bruseth from San Diego on a free, former player, 22 now. Didn't work out for him in MLS, clearly. And Jesper Isaksson comes in from Stabæk. Quite like those 2 players. Tobias Svensson from Odd. Been around the block a bit. Can be a useful Swiss Army knife. I quite like the midfield. That's the area that I think I like Kristiansund the most. Midfield, and that could be worth looking out for. Not the goalkeeping situation looks weak. Defense, not convinced either, really. Frederick Flex at left back, he needs to step up this season. Great name, that, isn't it? The likes of Dan Peter Ulverstad now, he's 37. And he's someone that historically gets injuries. They might be lightweight. Max Williamson, another injury risk, never seems to be fully fit. They've signed a couple of players. I don't know much about them. Alexander Muntsgaard from Ostrava, Czech Republic, is that? And Julius Mar Juliusson from KR Reykjavik. Don't know much about them. Right back and centre back. Maybe they can be Maybe they can be all right. But yeah, I just think they look better than some of the other teams that I'm predicting below. And maybe just as an overall combined team and a decent manager, they can survive again.
12th place, Kristiansund. So good luck to them. But obviously, we'll be keeping an eye on them as usual. Steve, the team I do like to, the backstory there is obviously that the years where you used to always predict them to lose or to get relegated, they always gave you a bit of a punch in the face, and it was always fun.
They have.
Watching how upset you were every single time they defied the odds, and that is why they won my favour. I also quite like their logo. The owl on the front of their logo, I quite like it. So, you mentioned their manager there, Amund Skiri, 48-year-old Norwegian. Maybe a manager who can keep them afloat. Steve, there's only 1 team left now that you think will not be in the relegation trouble. And we're running out of room here, Steve, so there could be a few shocks in line in terms of your predictions. We've got the newly promoted sides to discuss, as I've said. But In 13th place, Steve, who is the last team on this list you think is safe for the 2026 season?
This is a team that has been flirting with relegation for the last few seasons at times. In fact, there's been moments when I think the one season they started so badly we thought they were doomed. But I am putting 13th place HamKam. I think they just survive. But I am a bit worried about them this season. They did finish last season quite well, and they needed to avoid the drop. Thomas Myra came in, the former Everton goalkeeper, and I think they won something like 4 of their last 6 Eliteserien games. So fair play to Myra, their 3-5-2 system that he used. And they suddenly started scoring goals. But ironically, it's sort of maybe a lack of goals that I'm a bit concerned about with them this season. I just look through the squad and I just not sure I see an abundance of quality. I might be being a bit harsh here with HamKam. I could see some people putting them as high as even 11th. I don't see them top 10. If things go well, they could maybe be a couple of notches higher. But I just think a team that continually is close to the relegation zone, eventually one season can find you out. And if you just go below par, then you can find yourself in trouble. But they usually find a way out of trouble. So that's what makes me think they're going to avoid even the playoff match. But I'm worried about the lack of goals. I'm worried about general lack of quality. But they might prove me wrong. Let's see.
You know what? When you were just talking about them there, I just started thinking to myself, you said that they kind of teeter on the brink. Maybe they should just get relegated and get over with. And could they do a sort of a Lillestrøm, a Viking, a Brann and come back? But maybe they don't have quite the clout, Steve. They've always been a team that sort of, like you say, they're not a massive club, are they, from that point of view? So they're doing pretty well just to be surviving, aren't they? Wouldn't you say? A HamKam?
Oh yeah,
we made the meat man. Well. We made the meat man ham jokes quite a few years ago, and they've lasted ever since. We thought they'd be your team of choice, given the name.
I like them. I do like them as a club.
Yeah, they've done pretty well. What makes you think that they will just about have enough in terms of what you've seen transfer-wise?
I don't really like the transfers at all. It's more the players that are still here. Look, let's just talk about the lack of goals. I mean, Julian Gonstad, there's a lot on this young man's shoulders, 20-year-old. Came back from loan last season midway through and finished all right. They need him to fire. They've signed Noah Alexanderson from Moss on a free. Only scored 4 goals last season. Henrik Udel's back from a loan. Yeah, if Gonstad doesn't fire, I'm struggling to see where they get the goals from, really. They'll be relying on midfield goals and defender goals again. Gard Simonstad's got a really good free kick on him, and some set pieces, there'll be a threat. Loris Metler's coming from Sandefjord, a bit of a mare signing. Anders Tronston, a bit more of a veteran, that's not bad. Look at the defensively. They've signed a player from Haugesund on a free. They've signed Martin Gione from Sandefjord. They've got a lad on loan from Lech, Ian Hoffman. Doesn't really excite me too much. And I just look at the overall squad and I think, where's the quality? They've got a goalkeeper in Marcus Sandberg who is experienced and can be decent. There was a time when he was excellent, but he's probably just more of an average goalkeeper now. So, yeah, it's going to be a fight. They're going to be a battle. They're going to grind some matches. Let's see how Myra gets on with this team. They just look a little bit light of quality overall. That's why I think they're down there.
Yeah, down there, but they're not down. You've got them in 13th place, so you're saying they'll survive. Noah Alexanderson, Steve, an interesting fact. I had to double check this just now. He was at IFK Göteborg, son of Niklas Alexanderson, former Sheffield Wednesday. You might remember him back in the 90s. Niklas Alexanderson.
Yeah, I think I do.
Even you might be too young for that. But he was born in Warrington, Steve, so he's actually English nationality, Swedish under-19 international. I was surprised to see that he's drifted off in his career because he was obviously, through the Alexanderson name, he was highly rated as a youngster at IFK, but never quite made the grade there, and he's obviously dipped around. Steve, I had to double check with you on this one because I couldn't quite believe what I was seeing. when I looked at last season's table and I looked at your predictions. And then I looked back at last season's table and then I looked back at your predictions just to be sure. But for those eagle-eyed listeners or fans of this club who are thinking, wait a minute, why haven't you talked about my team yet? It's not because we've forgotten about you, Steve. It's because you're actually bookmarking a huge drop here. A massive swing. I'm not sure I've seen this before. A prediction this start from 5th place to 14th. In other words, relegation playoff. Steve, I'm quite shocked here. There was 8 points from Europe last year. Finishing 5th, great finish, above Rosenborg, for example, above Molde. And you're saying they are going to struggle and potentially go down. Take it away, Steve, 14th place.
Well, this prediction might leave me with a huge egg on my face. And last season it did. I predicted them 14th last season too. And look where they ended up. They could be like the new Kristiansund for me, Jonathan, because they kind of defy a lot of belief in terms of you look at the squad, you look at the performances, you know, like how they're doing it. But Sandefjord for me last season massively overachieved, hugely overachieved. 5th place for them. I can't believe how they managed to do that. How they managed to do it was with a really good home record. They won 11 out of 15 matches at home. Now, Sandefjord has never historically been a fortress. Far from it. So I don't understand that. It always has felt like quite an easy place to go. But suddenly it became a fortress. They did have obviously a large helping hand with Sigurd Darsen, was the 3rd top goal scorer in the league. He's departed to Go Ahead Eagles, £2.7 million. Stefan Ingi Sigurdarsson. That's a huge loss. They can't replace that player. That's irreplaceable for Sandefjord. No way. Well, I mean, they've brought in Nikolai Moller from Dundee United for £500,000. I saw nothing in his previous stats and career record that would suggest he gets anywhere close to Sigurdarsson. So immediately there's a lack of you're losing a huge weapon, which concerns me. A team that's overachieved hugely. The squad's light in numbers, looks threadbare in patches, midfield especially. They've lost players, other players like Christopher Cheng, for example, Wisdu. Nearly $1 million they got for him. He was a really key fullback. They've still got Vettel Vali Egeli. We thought he was going to be the better talent, but Cheng turned out to be the better talent. But again, the defense looks a bit lightweight in terms of depth. Goalkeeping, I'm not convinced by. Yeah, I'm not really confident about Sandefjord. And often when a team does have a season that's so much better than expected, it can fall flat the next campaign. However, they've done well in pre-season. 1 loss in 9 games. They won 7 of them. Pre-season doesn't mean everything. So it might just be one of those kind of rare examples of a club where they just somehow always overperform. And I'm kind of wily and experienced enough now to try and cotton on to these clubs. But the logical part of my brain will always have to put them in a low prediction because that's how I work. So they might prove me wrong again, but I am concerned about Sandefjord. They certainly have to drop. They've got to be bare minimum bottom half for me. And this might be a bit extreme, but I like to roll the dice occasionally. This is my kind of outlandish prediction in the bottom half of the table.
Well, nobody can ever accuse you of being a man who goes with the crowd. You've got your own mind. That's why you're a legend of the podcast. And that is why people listen to you week in, week out, Steve, to get your views. You will not shrink on the wallflowers. So yeah, big call. 5th to 14th. Wow. That's like basically predicting, I don't know, Chelsea to get Spurs finished 17th the year before. So.
Oh, they did, didn't they? Yeah, of course, I forgot that.
Yeah. That's it's like predicting Liverpool potentially.
I just want to give one bit of credit. I just want to credit the manager before I finish Sandefjord. He's done really well here. It was initially in a joint management with Lillestrøm's boss, of course. But Andreas Tegström has done, he's made water from wine from water at times, really. Fair play to him here at Sandefjord, and clearly the managerial situation is a big positive as well for the club, and he gets the most out of the players. But I'm just worried for him. Does he have that many weapons to work with now? How many tools actually as well? Ultimately, you're only as good as the players that you've got under you, aren't you? In some respects, so I think they've got a bit of work to do. They could look. They got 3 million for Sigurdarsson nearly. They may well be adding players before the end of March. The transfer window doesn't close until the 31st of March, so they may well be adding some players. Let's see how they get on after that. But at this point in time, I'm a bit worried for them. I am.
Nikolai Moller had to double check again. Ex-Arsenal Academy and Malmo. 19 games in the Scottish Premier League this season, Steve. How many goals?
Like 1 goal?
0.
I mean, that exactly. That is a huge concern. If the Scottish Premier League is not as good as it once was. Why would you?
Depends how you look at it, Hearts.
But why would you spend 500,000 on someone that hadn't scored a goal? What are they seeing in him? They must see something, obviously, but that just looks strange. And
still only 23 to his credit. He's a young player, so maybe he finds his feet. Who knows? But not a great time of it in Scotland, that's for sure. But
get on him for top scorer now. I've slagged him off.
He's been around, Steve. He's been at Bologna, Malmo, Arsenal, Victoria Köln, FC Den Bosch, FC St. Gallen, Strømsgodset, Dundee United, and now Sandefjord. And he's still only 23. He'll be 24.
That's incredible.
That's an incredible career history. Can he finally unlock the talent that has seen so many clubs take a punt on him? We shall see. But Steve, let's move on, because there's a bit of a contrast, a bit of a paradox on this podcast, on this season preview, which we're going to end up with. The dichotomy we have, Steve, is that you said the Aalborg and the Eliteserien are getting closer and closer. Teams go down and they come back by 25 points, he says. And yet, the final 2 positions, relegation, we are yet to talk about a newly promoted side, which means, Steve, you are predicting both newly promoted teams to go straight back down where they came from in this season's Eliteserien 2026. 2 interesting teams from different perspectives. One I know you're not a massively fan of, but I won't reveal which one it is, just to not prejudice your prediction. But take it away, Steve. You've got both to go down, so pick whoever you want. Who have you got rock bottom? And who have you got?
Well, I have predicted Lillestrøm to stay up, of course. The other promoted team. Three teams are up this year. But I don't see Start and Aalesund quite having enough. I don't think they're going to be shocking. I don't see enough here, especially Aalesund. I'm putting Start in 15th place. The problem is, if you just look at the Obos table last season, obviously Lillestrøm were exceptional. Different level to everyone else. You've got Start, who finished second on just 55 points, though. That's a pretty low number of points. Aalesund had even less than that, 52. They didn't even finish third. It was poor Kongsvinger who finished third, and now Aalesund beat them in the playoff, and then Aalesund beat Brann in the relegation promotion playoff. But for example, Start had the 4th best away record in the league. Aalesund just with the 8th best away record in the Obos. I mean, that's just shocking. If it really is. At least Start have signed some players that I kind of can get on board with a bit, and I think they've got a bit more experience at this level, or in leagues equivalent in other countries' level, to maybe give them a fighting chance. They've got an interesting manager as well, Azar Karadas. Now, this lad I remember when he played actually for the likes of Brann. And, he's you wouldn't mess with him. You wouldn't mess with Azar Karadas. He's a real hard sort of fella. And he's done well here managing Start. He's took them up. 3-5-2 system. I think they're going to have to rely on defence quite a lot. And that's their best area, really, in terms of depth and quality. 4 new signings there as well. Erlend Reitan looks a good signing from Rosenborg. Christopher Tonnesson from Lillestrøm, not bad. And then in the sort of midfield and attack, they've got players such as Adik Schulze, who's getting on a bit, but he's technically good. He was the second top scorer last season. Håkon Lorentzen was the leading scorer, former Brann man, 13 goals. Let's see what he does at this level. But at the same time, it's quite an aging squad in places, which can be good and bad. Obviously, you've got some experience. It just looks to lack a bit of quality. And but one thing I do like about it, they have at least tried to sign some players. So maybe some of these lads that are coming in who, there's 2 or 3 I don't know anything about. Maybe they can be a surprisingly good. So let's see. It's going to be a tough battle for start. I don't think they'll be disgraced by any means, but just it's hard. I said the Obos, the gap is sort of getting closer in patches, but Eliteserien strong. You said it yourself. Eliteserien strong. The established clubs are going to be hard to dislodge.
Steve, I mean, at the start, you can't really talk about them without talking about the behind the scenes as well. Bit of a quirky club. They've recently had some off-field developments as well that should be maybe stand them out as one to watch. Can you just give a bit more context about Start's background and history?
I don't know much about their background history. They were at one point they were bought by, I can't remember what group it was. But the recent developments, what are the recent developments for Start?
Yeah, taken over in 2025, Steve, by US investors. Made quite a big storm. They were taken over by a consortium, and I think
they're not particularly well liked as a club. I know that.
I think they're sort of like a bit marmitey, aren't they? There's sort of some people like them in Norway. Some are a bit, not too keen on them. Maybe the investment group obviously has talked about them in 2025. They've said that Norway is a strong football market and a rich talent pool and a passionate fan base. These are some Americans who took over the club, Steve, based from Philadelphia. So, I know that from that point of view, there's always, obviously, takeovers are always a bit contentious in Scandinavia, just from the point of view of 50+1 and things like that. Definitely in Sweden anyway. Norway may be slightly different, but yeah, they've said from the first day we stepped to the club, we felt this deep connection to this community, IK Start. They're based in Kristiansund, am I right? Start's legacy deserves to be elevated and returned to the top tier of Norwegian football. It's an investment group, Steve, that says they're going to have a tight-knit community of family and friends, they're claiming. So, yeah, I know that's caused a little bit of a stir. I think one of their investors is on the board at Philadelphia Union, and there's little things like that, Steve, basically, that I think have, raised eyebrows maybe. Or
I've never liked the club much myself. They had owners before who were controversial, I do believe. I didn't actually realise that the US group were now on board with them. In fairness, I missed that one. But it didn't surprise me. They're the sort of club that have always been that sort of way. You never see them sort of like a local sort of team. The support, I think, isn't great. I mean, I think I've described them on this podcast years ago as a bit of a nothing club. And, I was quite pleased to see the back of them, to be honest. And they're back now. And well done to them. And I would have loved to have predicted them bottom of the table. I would. But I think they can be 15th. They can knock on the door of the playoff. The managers are positive. Let's see how they get on. They'll be fired up, of course, getting promoted. So I think they're going to rely on that defense, though. 3 at the back, probably become 5 at the back. 5 at the back, won't it? Really, you'd imagine in quite a lot of games, and take it from there, really. But yeah, for me, Aalesund have to be bottom of the table, Jonathan, based simply on got a good manager, Aalesund, but the squad, this Aalesund squad is the worst squad on paper. I don't think anyone can deny it. I'm afraid it lacks. I mean, I went through the squad. I don't think there's hardly anyone that's even played at Eliteserien level before, bar 3 or 4 players. That is a huge concern for me for Aalesund. They were 4th last season anyway, so it wasn't like there were any great shakes. And, their top scorer is injured until July. I think he's the captain as well, Paul Ngongo. So concerns all over the park, but they do have Kjetil Rekdal as the manager. That's the biggest positive for me. I don't know what he's doing at Aalesund still. This guy, I think, could easily warrant a better job in Norway. But fair play to him. He's come to Aalesund for the last 2 years and he's took them up. I like Rekdal. He'll get the most out of the players, which is why I think for both of these teams, Aalesund and Start, and they won't disgrace themselves. I think we're probably looking at them in certainly 20 plus points, maybe even around the 25 to 30 point mark. It would be a close battle down there. I don't see anyone being set adrift. But ultimately, I've got to give Aalesund bottom of the table based on this lack of quality on paper. Although Christopher Claassen in goal, that's quite a good signing. I think, obviously he was at Leeds in the past. If he can rediscover his form and, a whole season starting, he's going to need a good season, isn't he, in goal? They're going to be facing a lot of shots. So, worrying times for Aalesund, but, well done to them. Well done to both clubs on getting back.
Well, not worrying times. They're back in the Eliteserien. They should be delighted. So, that's your prediction. We'll see how it goes, but they'll be full of optimism. Like every newly promoted side comes into it fresh with optimism. So let's not
I'm like the Grim Reaper there, aren't I, on them? Yeah.
They might pin those words on the dressing room. Not worrying times. They've done fantastically well.
Oh, it's been done many times before. The team that I predict bottom usually does quite well, by the way.
There you go. So fantastic times for them. Worrying times from your point of view may be that they might not survive. But listen, the start of a new season always has fresh optimism for every team. Claassen, to be honest, he was the only one I really am familiar with. There's a few players I have to say that I'm not familiar with on this squad list. But that'll do. Let's look at the final predictions then, Steve, before we wrap up this season preview episode. We have Aalesund, rock bottom of the league, 16th place, predicted by Meatman Soccer, at Meatman Soccer, if you want to tweet him and shout at his predictions. 15th place equals Start. The American takeover. Can they take over the relegation battle and get themselves out of it? Meatman doesn't think so. 15th. Sandefjord, relegation playoff. Unbelievable. HamKam 13th. Kristiansund in 12th. KFUM Oslo 11th. Sarpsborg 10th. Fredrikstad 9th. Lillestrøm 8th. Moving into the top half of the table. Rosenborg in 7th. Tromsø 6th. Vålerenga in 5th. Molde 4th place. And then the podium, Steve, Brann in 3rd. Viking, the current reigning champions, in 2nd. And winners, your predicted winners for the 2026 season. Bodø, Glimt. So, my final question to you, Steve. For the bottom half of the table, one fantasy pick. One player for your fantasy team in that bottom half.
Someone from KFUM Oslo. I think I'll put one in my team.
Must have fantasy pick, bottom half.
I wouldn't say must have, but you could get some. I reckon you could get some decent budget defenders from KFUM Oslo. Maybe someone like Bergley, Schneider, Hoseth could be someone to look at there. I think there's some bargains to be had at KFUM, basically, is what I'll be looking at down there. Who else did I predict down there? Let me just look at some other players that perhaps you could consider. Possibly someone from, where was I looking at? So HamKam, maybe you could get a defender from them because they might be solid in places. Ekaroth, maybe. But not too many I like down there.
Just one?
Well, I'm going with that Hoseth that KFUM, or some sort of KFUM defender. I need to see exactly where the minutes are going to be shared around, but I think they'll have some undervalued players because a lot of people are predicting KFUM to the bottom two.
Get your assets in KFUM. We've already given you the code. Good luck entering the league. Sounds like it's a bit more complicated this year. Still haven't done my team yet. But that'll be it for this season's season preview, Eliteserien 2026. Steve, where can we find listeners want to subscribe? Where can they find us?
YouTube, Spotify, they're the best sources. Please do subscribe. Leave your comments as well. We like the comments we have. Let us know what you think of my predictions. I can take anything. Take some hits at me if you want to, because it's a game of opinions, isn't it? At the end of the day, I'm fully aware there will be some listeners cringing a bit, well, not cringing, but being angry, hearing what I'm saying, thinking that their team will be better, etc. And that's fair enough. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Good. Looking forward to the season. 2 rounds before the international window, and I think the party really gets started in April, Jonathan. Really.
Yeah, there will be that break for the World Cup, as you said. So it's going to be a sort of stop-start season, although who knows, World War III might kick off before this World Cup kicks off. So who knows where we'll go there. All sorts of controversy going on in that side of the world. But we'll wrap it up there. Excellent prediction, Steve. Great research as usual. Your spreadsheet's taken a hammering this last few weeks, I know for sure. As always, we keep databases of these teams. We do a lot of due diligence. It's not just a podcast with a bit of banter. We do our research, Steve, or I like to think we do our research. So thank you for listening. We will have obviously regular episodes throughout 2026 as well. We have the Svenskan season preview to come. But for now, that'll be it on this podcast. My name is Jonathan Fadugba. Steve Wyss, thank you for your time. See you soon. Get your predictions into us. Let us know who you think will win the league, who you think will be relegated. But for now, we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.